I couldn't sleep the night before our trip. Not from excitement, from this gnawing feeling in my gut that something wasn't right. I ignored it, like I always do when my anxiety flares. Because that's what good friends do, right? They trust. The airport buzzed with early morning chaos as I juggled my carry-on and the group's itinerary I'd spent weeks perfecting. My phone pinged with Cecilia's message. "Running late. Save us spots in the security line." I smiled, scrolling through our group chat where everyone had been gushing about our girls' trip to Barcelona for months. 5 best friends since college, our first international vacation together. And I'd been the one to make it happen. Researching hotels, finding flight deals, creating spreadsheets of must-see attractions. "Lucia!" I turned to see Paisley rushing toward me, her blonde hair bouncing with each step. She threw her arms around me, smelling of expensive perfume and coffee. "God, I can't believe we're actually doing this." She squeezed my shoulders. "Cecilia and the others are parking. They sent me ahead to find you." Relief washed over me. That knot in my stomach, just regular travel anxiety. "I've got our boarding passes ready," I said, pulling out my phone. "And I exchanged some euros yesterday, enough to split between us until we find an ATM in Barcelona." Paisley's smile flickered for just a second. "You're always so prepared. What would we do without you?" The security line moved quickly. I kept glancing back toward the entrance, checking my phone. "They're cutting it close," I muttered, checking the time. Paisley shrugged. "You know Cecilia. She's probably making Morgan carry all her bags." I laughed, but that feeling returned, sharper now. "Should I call them? Our boarding starts in 40 minutes. "I'll text," Paisley said, typing rapidly. She frowned at her screen. "Service is spotty in here." By the time we cleared security, my chest felt tight. 30 minutes to boarding and still no sign of the others. "Something's wrong," I said, dialing Cecilia's number. Straight to voicemail. Same with Morgan's and Krista's. Paisley touched my arm. "Hey, I need to use the bathroom. Watch my stuff?" I nodded, still staring at my phone. 25 minutes to boarding. I sent another group message. "Where are you guys? About to board." 15 minutes later, Paisley hadn't returned. I called her phone. No answer. I gathered our bags and hurried to the bathroom, pushing open the door. "Paisley?" Empty stalls greeted me. 10 minutes to boarding. My hands shook as I called each friend again. Nothing. I rushed to our gate, dragging both my bag and Paisley's, telling myself there was an explanation. Traffic, a car problem, anything. Final boarding call for flight 14222 to Barcelona. I stood frozen at the gate, 5 boarding passes in my hand. The flight attendant gave me a sympathetic look. "Miss, are you boarding?" My voice came out small. "I'm waiting for my friends." "I'm sorry, but we're closing the doors. You need to board now or miss the flight." I boarded alone, numb. Paisley's abandoned bag now checked with the gate agent. The empty seats beside me screamed louder than any explanation could. I kept checking my phone, willing it to light up with an apology, an emergency, anything. 3 hours into the flight, I finally got signal through the plane's Wi-Fi. My phone exploded with notifications. Not from my friends, but from Instagram. With trembling fingers, I opened the app. There they were, all 4 of them, Cecilia, Paisley, Morgan, and Krista, posing in first-class seats, champagne flutes raised in a toast, on a different airline. The caption read, "Barcelona bound, upgrade life, Vosh squad goals, Vosh first class only." My stomach dropped as I scrolled through more posts. Them at a gate lounge I didn't recognize. Them boarding a luxury airline. All posted just minutes after Paisley had left me at security. I zoomed in on Cecilia's smiling face, her perfectly manicured hand clutching a boarding pass, a first-class ticket purchased with my credit card number. The realization hit me like a physical blow. They had never intended to fly with me. Paisley had only come to make sure I boarded my flight, alone, while they took off on a better one, with my money. My hands shook so badly, I dropped my phone. The elderly woman next to me glanced over with concern. "Are you all right, dear?" I couldn't answer. How could I explain that my 4 best friends had just abandoned me, stolen from me, and were now flaunting it on social media? Another notification. A video this time? The 4 of them clinking glasses in what looked like a luxurious airport lounge. "To Lucia," Cecilia said, her red lips curving into a smile that never reached her eyes. "Thanks for funding our upgrade. Enjoy economy." Their laughter cut through me like glass as the video ended. I turned my phone off and stared out the window at endless clouds. a single thought crystallizing through my shock and pain. This wasn't just a prank or a misunderstanding. This was premeditated betrayal, and I was flying straight toward whatever else they had planned for me. The Barcelona airport swallowed me whole. I stumbled through customs in a daze, my mind replaying that video on endless loop, their laughter, Cecilia's toast, the casual cruelty of it all. I'd spent the remainder of the flight alternating between numbness and nausea. Now, standing alone at baggage claim, reality crashed down. Not only had they abandoned me, they'd stolen from me. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and opened my banking app. No, no, no. 4 separate charges from Luxury Airways. First-class tickets to Barcelona, $3,042 each. Over $15,000 charged to my credit card. My emergency fund decimated. A sob caught in my throat. I'd given Cecilia my card information to book our group rate tickets weeks ago. I never imagined she'd use it for this. My phone pinged with a hotel notification. We look forward to your stay at Hotel Marisol. The hotel. The one I'd booked for all of us, with the 2 adjoining suites and ocean view. Another $4,000 I couldn't get back due to the non-refundable rate. I called the credit card company immediately, my voice breaking as I explained the fraud. The representative's sympathy only made it worse. I'm sorry, Ms. Reyes, but since you previously authorized this person to use your card information for travel arrangements, this will be difficult to dispute. We can start the process, but I should warn you. I hung up. What was the point? Outside the airport, Barcelona's beauty felt like a slap. Sunshine, palm trees, the distant shimmer of the Mediterranean. All of it mocked me. This was supposed to be our dream vacation. 5 days of sightseeing, beach lounging, and tapas with my closest friends. Friends. The word tasted bitter now. I hailed a taxi, giving the driver the address of the cheapest hostel I could find on short notice. My original hotel was out of the question. I couldn't risk running into them. The hostel was exactly what you'd expect for €20 a night. A narrow bed in a room shared with 7 strangers, a bathroom down the hall, and walls thin enough to hear conversations in 3 different languages. I sat on the edge of the squeaking mattress, my suitcase still packed at my feet. I should go home, book the next flight back, and cut my losses. But something hot and unfamiliar burned in my chest. Not just hurt, rage. Pure, clarifying rage. My phone pinged again. An Instagram notification? My finger hovered over it, knowing it would hurt to look. I clicked anyway. A new post from Krista, the 4 of them lounging by a rooftop pool. My hotel. My reservation. The caption, living our best lives while someone else pays the bills. Blessed. Comments flooded in from mutual friends. OMG, you guys look amazing. So jealous? Where's Lucia? To that last one, Cecilia had replied, she flaked last minute. Typical Lucia, always unreliable. The phone slipped from my fingers. Unreliable? I was the one who planned everything, who made sure everyone had their passport renewals in time, who created a shared document with packing lists and emergency contacts. I grabbed my phone again and started typing a comment, fingers flying with fury, then stopped, deleted it. No. This required something more than an angry comment. I opened my email and found the hotel confirmation. With trembling fingers, I called the Hotel Marisol. Hello, this is Lucia Reyes. I'm checking on my reservation. I forced my voice to stay steady. 2 adjoining suites under my name. Yes, Ms. Reyes. Your friends have already checked in using the authorization you provided. Is there a problem? I swallowed hard. No problem. I just wanted to confirm something. The reservation was made with my credit card, correct? Yes, and we have it on file for incidentals as well. Incidentals? My heart raced. What does that cover exactly? Room service, spa treatments, restaurant charges, minibar, anything charged to the room. I ended the call and sat in the dim hostel room, a plan forming. They thought they could use me, humiliate me, and steal from me? Fine. Let them run up the bill. Let them order champagne and spa treatments. Because I wasn't going home. Not yet. I pulled out my laptop and began researching. Spanish laws on credit card fraud, hotel policies, social media timestamps. With each piece of information, my focus sharpened. A notification from my banking app interrupted me. Another charge from the hotel. Restaurant bill, $580. I laughed, a hollow sound in the empty room. They weren't even trying to hide it. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered cautiously. Hello? Is this Lucia? A man's voice, accented but clear. Who's asking? My name is Jackson. I work at Hotel Marisol. I think... He paused. I think you should know what your friends are saying about you. I sat up straight. What do you mean? They're telling everyone you're mentally unstable, that you threatened them before the trip, that they had to escape you. His voice lowered. They're setting you up for something, and I don't think it's just about a free vacation. The room seemed to tilt around me. This wasn't just theft or a cruel prank. This was character assassination, premeditated destruction. Why are you telling me this? I whispered, because I overheard something else. Something about your job, about emails they sent from your account. My blood turned to ice. My job, the editorial position I'd worked years to secure. What emails? I don't know details, but they mentioned your boss's name, and they were laughing about how you'd never work in publishing again. The rage inside me crystallized into something harder, colder, more focused. Can you meet me? I asked. Tomorrow, Cafe Miro at 10 a.m. As I hung up, I opened my laptop again. This wasn't just about getting even anymore. This was about survival. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, memories ambushed me, moments I'd once treasured that now felt poisoned. Cecilia hugging me after my promotion, whispering, "You deserve this more than anyone." Paisley crying on my shoulder when her boyfriend cheated, promising, "You're the only one I trust." Morgan and I dancing in my kitchen at 2 a.m. after too much wine. Krista helping me pick out my interview outfit, insisting, "This is the one that says editor material." Had it all been fake? I scrolled through years of photos on my phone, studying their faces for signs I'd missed. The trip to Miami last year, my birthday dinner 3 months ago, the weekly brunches. When had they decided I was disposable? By morning, my eyes burned and my head throbbed. I dressed carefully in the only decent outfit I'd packed, black jeans and a blue blouse, and headed to Cafe Miro to meet Jackson. The cafe sat on a corner with outdoor tables spilling onto a sun-dappled sidewalk. I spotted him immediately, tall with dark curly hair, wearing the hotel's distinctive navy blazer. He stood when he saw me, his expression somber. "Lucia, I'm Jackson." I slid into the chair across from him, hands wrapped around my bag like a shield. "Thank you for meeting me, for warning me." He nodded, sliding a coffee toward me. "I ordered for you. Hope that's okay." I took a sip, grateful for the caffeine. "Why are you helping me? You could lose your job." Jackson's eyes, deep brown with flecks of amber, met mine. My sister went through something similar in university, a group of friends who turned on her. Nobody believed her until it was too late. He shrugged. "I guess I'm trying to balance some cosmic scale." "What exactly did you hear them say about me?" He leaned forward. "They were in the hotel bar last night, drinking expensive champagne. The one with the red hair? Cecilia." "Yes. She was showing the others something on her phone. Emails, I think. She said, Lucia's boss will fire her before she even gets back. No publishing house will touch her after this." My stomach clenched. "Did you see what was in the emails?" "No, but they mentioned someone named Spencer, said he was helping them." Spencer. The name hit me like a physical blow. "Spencer Bennett?" Jackson nodded. "You know him?" I stared into my coffee, memories shifting into horrifying new patterns. Spencer, the charming literary agent I'd met at a publishing conference 3 months ago, who'd asked me out for drinks, who'd seemed so interested in my career, my friends, my life, who'd disappeared after our 3rd date, right around the time Cecilia started planning this trip. "He works with my publishing house," I said quietly. "We went out a few times. He had access to my work email once when he borrowed my phone." Jackson's expression darkened. "There's more. The blonde one. Paisley. She seemed uncomfortable, said something like, 'This is going too far.' The redhead shut her down immediately. Said, 'After what Lucia did to me, she deserves worse.'" I froze. What I did to her, I haven't done anything to Cecilia. That's what the quiet one said too. Morgan. She asked what you'd done that was so terrible. The redhead just said, "You don't know everything about our sweet Lucia." My mind raced. Cecilia and I had been friends for 8 years without major conflict. What could she possibly think I'd done? "I need to see those emails," I said, and I need to know what they're planning next. Jackson hesitated. I work the evening shift at the hotel bar. I could keep an eye on them, maybe get more information. Why would you risk that for me? You don't know me. His eyes softened. Let's just say I recognize the look of someone who's been blindsided by people they trusted. Back at the hostel, I opened my laptop with shaking hands and logged into my work email. Nothing seemed amiss at first glance. No angry messages from my boss, no suspicious sent items. Then I checked the trash folder. My blood ran cold. 3 emails sent from my account to senior editors at rival publishing houses, offering confidential manuscripts from our upcoming catalog. Emails to my boss complaining about his leadership and threatening to quit. Worst of all, an email to our biggest author, criticizing her latest draft in cruel, unprofessional terms. All sent while I was on the plane to Barcelona. All deleted afterward. I called my boss immediately, my voice shaking as I explained about the hacked account, the fraudulent emails. Lucia, he cut me off, his voice ice cold. I've already heard from 3 publishing houses and Caroline Wright herself. Whatever game you're playing, it's over. We'll discuss your termination when you return. The line went dead. I sat frozen, staring at the wall. My career, the thing I'd worked towards since college, destroyed in a day. My phone pinged with a text from Jackson. They're planning something for tonight. Overheard them talking about La Rambla at 9 p.m. Something about making sure you show up. I texted back. How would they make sure I show up somewhere? His response came seconds later. They mentioned posting something that would force you to come find them. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with an Instagram notification. A new post from Krista. My fingers trembled as I opened it. A photo of my passport laid out on a hotel bed. The caption, "Found this in our room. Poor Lucia must be panicking without it. If you're reading this, honey, come to La Boqueria at 9 p.m. We'll be waiting with your ticket home." Good friends, jar helping out. I hadn't even realized my passport was missing. Paisley must have taken it when she disappeared at the airport. Without it, I couldn't fly home, couldn't escape whatever trap they were setting. I stared at the photo, a cold clarity washing over me. They thought they had all the power, that I would come running, desperate and afraid. They didn't know that desperate people are dangerous, and they had no idea what I was capable of. La Boqueria market pulsed with life even as evening approached. Vendors called out final discounts, tourists haggled over souvenirs, and locals navigated the chaos with practiced ease. I blended in among them, baseball cap pulled low, sunglasses hiding my red-rimmed eyes. I'd arrived an hour early to scout the location. No way was I walking blindly into whatever Cecilia had planned. From my vantage point at a small tapas bar at the market's edge, I could monitor the main entrance while remaining hidden. I sipped a glass of wine I couldn't taste, my nerves electric with anticipation. My phone buzzed. Jackson. I'm at the north entrance. No sign of them yet. After our coffee meeting, Jackson had offered to help me tonight. I'd hesitated. Involving a stranger in my mess felt wrong, but I needed eyes in places I couldn't be. Thanks, I texted back. Remember, don't approach them. Just let me know when they arrive and where they position themselves. I'd spent the afternoon preparing. First, filing a police report about my stolen passport, a paper trail that might prove useful later. Then researching Spanish privacy laws after discovering Krista's post with my passport had been shared hundreds of times. Finally, calling the American embassy to report the theft and arrange an emergency replacement. The embassy appointment wasn't until tomorrow morning, which meant tonight I needed to get my passport back without falling into whatever trap they'd set. My phone buzzed again. Jackson. They're here, all 4 of them. Plus a man I don't recognize. Tall, blonde, expensive watch. Spencer. My stomach twisted. Where are they setting up? I texted. Central Fountain. The blonde one is holding your passport, visible in her hand. Paisley. Of course they'd give her that job. The weakest link. Any sign they've spotted you? No, I'm just another tourist taking photos. I took a deep breath and texted him my plan. It was risky, but it was the best I could come up with on short notice. At 8:55 p.m., I moved to my position near a crowded churro stand, 20 meters from the fountain. From here, I could see them, but remained partially obscured by the line of customers. They stood in a loose circle around the fountain, Cecilia in a striking red dress that made her look like she was attending a cocktail party rather than meeting in a market. Morgan and Krista flanking her like bodyguards, Paisley slightly apart, my passport clutched in her manicured hand, and Spencer, his arm casually draped around Cecilia's waist. The sight of them together confirmed my suspicions. This wasn't just about a free vacation. This was personal. At exactly 9 p.m., Jackson approached them, playing his role perfectly. A concerned hotel employee who recognized them from the Marisol. "Excuse me," I heard him say as I inched closer, still hidden by the churro line. "Are you guests from Hotel Marisol? There's been an incident with your room charges." Cecilia's smile faltered. "What kind of incident?" "The credit card on file has been reported stolen. The police are at the hotel taking statements. They asked me to locate you." Cecilia's face hardened. "That's ridiculous. We have authorization to use that card." Spencer stepped forward, all smooth confidence. "There must be some mistake. I'm sure we can clear this up." Jackson shook his head. The card holder filed a formal police report. Something about identity theft and unauthorized charges. They're quite serious. I watched Cecilia's composure crack slightly. Good. Let her feel a fraction of the panic I'd felt. "This is absurd," she snapped. "Lucia gave us permission to use her card." "The police mentioned something about emails, too," Jackson continued. "Corporate espionage? They're seizing the hotel computers for evidence." Spencer's arm dropped from Cecilia's waist. "What exactly did the police say?" As they focused on Jackson, I made my move. Slipping through the crowd, I approached from behind Paisley, who stood slightly apart from the others, looking increasingly uncomfortable. I tapped her shoulder. She turned, her eyes widening in shock. "Lucia!" Before she could alert the others, I spoke quietly but firmly. "Give me my passport, Paisley." Her hand tightened around it. "I can't." Cecilia said what? That I deserved this? What exactly did I do to her, Paisley? What could possibly justify stealing thousands of dollars from me and destroying my career? Confusion flickered across her face. "You know what you did. The thing with her father's company." I stared at her, genuinely baffled. "What are you talking about?" Paisley's certainty wavered. "The investment deal. You sabotaged it. Cost her father millions." "I've never had anything to do with her father's business. I don't even know what he does." Doubt crept into her eyes. "But Cecilia showed us the emails. From your account to her father's competitor." The pieces clicked together. More forged emails. More lies. "Paisley, my account was hacked. Probably by Spencer. Think about it. When did he start hanging around our group? Right after he and I went out, right before this trip was planned." Her eyes darted to Spencer, then back to me. "But why would he—" "I don't know yet. But I do know I never sent any emails about Cecilia's father. Just like I never sent the ones that got me fired yesterday." Shock registered on her face. "Fired? Lucia, I didn't know." "My passport, Paisley. Now." She hesitated, then pressed it into my hand. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't know it would go this far." As my fingers closed around the passport, Cecilia's voice cut through the market noise. "Lucia, how predictable." I turned to face her, tucking my passport securely into my jacket. The others had noticed me now. Jackson stood to the side, his role complete. Cecilia's smile was all teeth. "Come to beg for forgiveness?" "No," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I came to understand why, but I think I'm starting to see the picture." Spencer stepped forward, his handsome face unreadable. "Lucia, always the victim, aren't you?" Interesting choice of words from the man who hacked my email. I turned to Cecilia. "Whatever he told you I did to your father's company, it wasn't me." A flicker of uncertainty crossed her face before hardening again. "Don't play innocent. We saw the emails." "Emails can be faked. Just ask my former boss." Spencer laughed, but I caught the tension in it. "You're really going with 'I was hacked'? How original." I met his gaze directly. "What's your stake in this, Spencer? What do you get out of destroying my life?" Before he could answer, a market security guard approached, drawn by our increasingly heated exchange. "Is there a problem here?" he asked in accented English. "No problem," Spencer said smoothly. "Just friends catching up." I looked at each of their faces. Cecilia's cold anger, Morgan's confusion, Krista's discomfort, Paisley's guilt, and Spencer's calculating calm. "No," I said finally. "No problem at all. We're finished here." As I walked away, passport secure in my pocket, I heard Paisley call after me. "Lucia, wait." I didn't turn around. I'd gotten what I came for, and more importantly, I'd planted the first seed of doubt. The game had changed. Now I needed to find out what Spencer was really after, and why he'd chosen me as his target. "You're sure it was her father's company?" I asked Jackson as we walked along the darkened beachfront, waves crashing rhythmically against the shore. After the market confrontation, we'd retreated to regroup, the night air cooling my flushed skin. "Positive. Cecilia mentioned her father would destroy you once he confirmed you were behind the emails." Jackson kicked at the sand. "Something about insider trading allegations?" I stopped walking. "Wait, her father, is he Richard Harmon, of Harmon Investments?" Jackson shrugged. She didn't say his name. My mind raced. Richard Harmon. I'd edited a business memoir that had mentioned him. A ruthless investor known for destroying companies he targeted. And his daughter was Cecilia. How had I never made that connection? "Cecilia never talks about her family," I murmured. "She told us her parents were academics." "Well, she's definitely not hurting for money. The room service bills alone." I pulled out my phone and searched for Richard Harmon. His company photo appeared, silver-haired, steel-eyed, with Cecilia's distinctive jawline. Recent news articles mentioned a failed hostile takeover of a publishing group. My publishing group. "Oh my God," I whispered. "It's not about me at all." Jackson leaned closer to see my screen. "What do you mean?" 3 months ago, Harmon Investments tried to acquire North Star Publishing, where I work. The deal fell through when our CEO found another investor. I looked up at Jackson. A week later, Spencer asked me out for drinks. Understanding dawned on his face. "He was using you to get information about your company. And when that didn't work, they fabricated emails from my account to damage North Star's reputation." The pieces were falling into place with sickening clarity. I was just collateral damage. We walked in silence for a moment, the implications settling heavily between us. "What will you do now?" Jackson finally asked. "I need proof. Something that connects Spencer to the hacked emails." I sighed. "But how? It's not like I can hack into his phone." Jackson's expression shifted. "Maybe you can't, but I might know someone who can." The next morning, I sat in a tiny office above a computer repair shop in the Gothic Quarter. Jackson's friend Marta, a cybersecurity specialist with questionable ethics, typed furiously at her keyboard while explaining the plan. "The hotel's Wi-Fi system is basic. If Spencer logs in, I can create a mirror site that looks like his email provider." Her fingers flew across the keys. "When he enters his password, we capture it." "Is that legal?" I asked. Marta and Jackson exchanged glances. "Let's call it a gray area," she said, "especially since you're trying to prove he committed a crime against you." I nodded, pushing down my discomfort. A week ago, I would never have considered anything like this. But a week ago, I still had friends I trusted and a career I loved. How long will it take? If he uses the hotel Wi-Fi, minutes after he logs in. Marta handed me a small device. "This needs to be within 20 meters of the hotel's main router. Jackson says he can plant it during his shift." Jackson nodded. "The router's near the front desk. I can manage it." I looked between them, overwhelmed by their willingness to help. "Why are you doing this? Both of you?" Marta shrugged. "Jackson helped me when I first moved here. Said I owed him one." She smiled slightly. "Besides, I hate entitled rich kids who think they can ruin someone's life for daddy's business deal." 3 hours later, I paced my hostel room, waiting for news. My embassy appointment had gone smoothly. Emergency passport in process, ready tomorrow. One problem solved, 100 more to go. My phone buzzed with a text from Jackson. "It worked. Marta has access. Come now." I rushed back to Marta's office, heart pounding. She greeted me with a triumphant smile. "Got him. His email is full of communications with Cecilia about you." She turned her screen toward me. "Look at this one from 3 months ago." The email showed Spencer outlining a plan to get close to the North Star editor to extract information about the Westbrook deal. "Keep scrolling," Marta said. More emails appeared. Spencer reporting back to Cecilia about our dates. His frustration when I didn't reveal anything useful about work. Then the smoking gun. Detailed instructions from Spencer to Cecilia about how to access my email using credentials he'd stolen from my phone. "There's your proof," Marta said quietly. I stared at the screen, a strange hollowness expanding in my chest. Seeing it laid out so clinically, how they'd targeted me, used me, discarded me, made it somehow more brutal than I'd imagined. Can you forward these to me?" My voice sounded distant to my own ears. Marta nodded, typing quickly. "Done. I've also taken screenshots in case he realizes and deletes them." I thanked her, feeling numb. Outside, Jackson waited, concern etched on his face. "You okay?" I wasn't. Not remotely. But I nodded anyway. "What now?" he asked as we walked through narrow streets bathed in late afternoon light. "Now I make them face what they've done." Jackson grabbed my arm, stopping me. "Lucia, think carefully. These people destroyed your career without blinking. What else might they do if cornered?" "What choice do I have? Let them get away with it? Go home jobless and humiliated while they laugh about how they ruined me? There are other options. You could send the evidence to the police, to your company." I pulled away. "That's not enough. I want them to look me in the eye. I want them to admit what they did. Even if it puts you in danger, I'm already in danger. My life is already in pieces." My voice echoed off the ancient stone buildings. A passing couple stared, then hurried away. Jackson didn't flinch from my outburst. "Then at least don't do it alone." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a notification. An Instagram message from Paisley. "We need to talk, alone. Meet me at Park Güell in an hour. I know the truth about Spencer." I showed Jackson the message. "It's a trap," he said immediately. "Maybe." I stared at the screen. Or maybe she's having second thoughts. "Lucia, I have to go." I met his worried gaze. "But you're right. I shouldn't go alone." Relief softened his features. "I'll be there, at a distance." As we parted to prepare, I felt something shift inside me. A hardening resolve, yes, but something else too. A recognition that in losing old connections, I'd somehow formed new ones. Ones based not on years of shared history, but on something perhaps more valuable. The simple choice to stand beside someone when they needed it most. Park Güell sprawled across the hillside, Gaudi's fantastical architecture catching the golden light of late afternoon. Tourists clustered around the famous mosaic salamander and colorful terraces, but I headed for the less crowded Palm Tree Avenue where Paisley had specified we meet. Jackson and I had arrived separately. He positioned himself at a cafe with clear sightlines to my meeting spot, pretending to read a guidebook while keeping watch. We'd agreed on a signal. If I touched my hair twice, he'd intervene. I spotted Paisley before she saw me. She sat alone on a bench, fidgeting with her bracelets, a nervous habit I recognized from our college days. She wore oversized sunglasses despite the fading light and kept glancing around anxiously. "Paisley," she startled, then stood quickly. "Lucia, you came. You said you knew the truth about Spencer." She glanced around nervously. "Not here. Let's walk." I hesitated, scanning the area for any sign of the others. Nothing obvious. I nodded and fell into step beside her as we moved toward a more secluded path lined with stone arches. "They don't know I'm here," she said quietly. "Cecilia would kill me if she knew." "Why risk it then?" Paisley stopped walking, removing her sunglasses. Her eyes were red-rimmed. "Because this has gone too far. What they did to your job, I didn't know about that part until you told me." "What did you think was happening, Paisley? That we were just playing a harmless prank on me?" She flinched. "Cecilia said you'd betrayed her family, that you deserved it." She looked down. I believed her because, well, she's Cecilia. She's always been our leader. The pathetic truth of that statement hung between us. How easily we'd all fallen into orbit around Cecilia's charisma, accepting her version of reality without question. "What changed your mind?" I asked. "Last night, after you left, I heard Spencer and Cecilia arguing in their room. The walls are thin." She took a deep breath. "Spencer was angry that you'd gotten your passport back. He said something about the deal being compromised, and how her father would blame him if they couldn't deliver what they promised." I tensed. What exactly did they promise? "I don't know specifics, But Spencer mentioned something about needing access to your work accounts for longer than they'd had, that the emails they sent weren't enough. Cold dread settled in my stomach. They're not done. No, and Lucia. She hesitated. They mentioned Morgan's boyfriend. David? What about him? He works in your company's IT department, right? The realization hit me like a physical blow. They're going to use him to access the system directly. Paisley nodded miserably. I think that was always the plan. The vacation, the emails from your account. It was just to discredit you when the real attack happened. I turned away, struggling to process this new information. David had access to North Star's entire network. With his credentials, they could plant false financial reports, leak confidential manuscripts, sabotage upcoming releases, anything to tank the company's value and make it vulnerable to Harmon's next takeover attempt. Why are you telling me this now? I asked, turning back to her. Tears welled in her eyes. Because I helped them hurt you, and you don't deserve it. Because I was too weak to stand up to Cecilia before. She wiped her cheeks. And because they're planning something tonight. Something final. What? What are they planning? I don't know details, but Spencer made a call this morning about closing the loop tonight. Something about making sure you couldn't interfere. A chill ran through me. Are they going to try to hurt me? I don't think so. Not physically. But Spencer said something about making sure you were contained until they were back in the States. She reached for my hand. Lucia, you need to leave Barcelona. Today. I pulled away from her. So that's your solution? I run away while they destroy my company and my reputation? It's not safe for you here. It wasn't safe the moment they decided to use me as a pawn in their corporate game. My voice hardened. Does Morgan know about using David? Paisley looked away. She knows. She's the one who suggested it. The betrayal cut deeper than I expected. Morgan, the friend I'd thought had the strongest moral compass. And Krista? She's just following Cecilia, like always. Paisley's voice dropped. Like I was. Was, I repeated. Past tense. She nodded, a fragile determination in her eyes. I can't do this anymore. I want to help you stop them. I studied her face, looking for signs of deception. How do I know this isn't another trap? That you're not recording this conversation for them right now? Without hesitation, she handed me her phone. Check it. I'm not recording anything. I'm not wearing a wire. This is real, Lucia. I took the phone, verified it wasn't recording, and handed it back. If you want to help me, I need something concrete. Proof I can use. I have access to their hotel room. I could... No, I cut her off. Too risky. But there is something you can do. I outlined my plan quickly, watching her expression shift from uncertainty to nervous resolve. I can do that, she said finally. Tonight? Tonight, I confirmed, before they make their move. As we finalized details, my phone buzzed with an urgent text from Jackson. Behind you, red shirt. I turned casually, spotting a man in a red polo shirt taking photos in our direction. Not a tourist. His camera was aimed directly at us. We need to go, I said, grabbing Paisley's arm. Someone's watching. Her face paled. Spencer has friends here, people he's paying to track you. We hurried toward the park exit, taking a winding path through stone columns. I texted Jackson our route as we moved. If they know we've talked, they'll suspect me, Paisley whispered, panic edging her voice. Then make it look good, I said, stopping suddenly. Slap me. What? If anyone's watching, make it look like we argued, like you're still on their side. Understanding dawned in her eyes. She raised her hand and slapped me, not hard enough to hurt, but convincing enough for distant observers. Then she stormed off, playing her part perfectly. I touched my cheek, watching her go. The sensation lingered as Jackson appeared at my side. You okay? He asked. No, I said quietly. But I will be. Tonight, this ends. I turned to him, my decision made. I need your help with one more thing. Something dangerous. His eyes met mine, steady and certain. I'm in. As we left the park, I felt the weight of what was coming. By morning, I'd either have reclaimed my life or lost everything that remained of it. Either way, there would be no going back. Night fell over Barcelona, the city transforming into a glittering landscape of lights. From the rooftop bar of Hotel Marisol, I could see the illuminated spires of Sagrada Familia in the distance. Under different circumstances, the view would have been breathtaking. Tonight, it was just the backdrop for what I'd come to do. I adjusted the collar of the borrowed hotel uniform Jackson had procured for me, a server's outfit that let me blend with staff. My hair was pulled back severely, face partially obscured by the cap's brim. Not a perfect disguise, but enough to move through the hotel unnoticed. "They've been at the bar for 20 minutes, Jackson murmured, passing by with a tray of empty glasses. "Spencer's been on his phone most of the time." I nodded slightly, continuing to wipe down an already clean table. From my position, I could observe without being obvious. All four of them sat at a corner table. Cecilia laughing too loudly, Morgan checking her watch repeatedly, Krista scrolling through her phone, and Spencer leaning in to speak privately with Cecilia. No sign of Paisley. My phone vibrated in my pocket. A text from Marta. "In position. Elevator security cameras looping previous footage. You have 15 minutes. It was time. I slipped away from the rooftop bar, heart hammering as I took the service elevator down to the guest floors. The hallway was empty when I emerged. Room 718, Spencer and Cecilia's suite, waited at the end of the corridor. Paisley had left the door very slightly ajar, as promised. I pushed it open, scanning the luxurious suite quickly before entering and closing the door behind me. "Paisley," I whispered. She emerged from the bathroom, face pale with tension. "I thought you'd changed your mind. Did you find it?" She nodded, pointing to Spencer's laptop on the desk. "It's unlocked. He stepped away to take a call, and I managed to keep it from going to sleep." I moved to the computer, fingers flying across the keyboard. Spencer's email was open, the same account Marta had accessed earlier. I quickly forwarded key incriminating emails to myself, then to my boss, the company's legal department, and the board of directors. "What about the other thing?" I asked. Paisley handed me a phone. Spencer's. "I got his passcode yesterday when he was drunk. 6842. I unlocked it, finding his text messages with Cecilia. There it was. Explicit discussions about using me to get information about North Star Publishing, plans to discredit me, coordination with Morgan about using David's IT access. "Send these to yourself," I told Paisley. "Insurance in case something happens to me." As she did this, I noticed a calendar notification on Spencer's phone. 11 p.m., L containment. My blood ran cold. They're planning something for 11. Paisley looked at her watch. That's in 20 minutes. I photographed everything I could, working quickly. Then I found what I was really looking for, Spencer's contacts. I scrolled until I found the name I needed, then pressed call. It rang 3 times before a gruff voice answered. "Bennett, this better be important." "Mr. Harmon," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "This isn't Spencer. My name is Lucia Reyes." A pause. "The editor." "Yes, the one your daughter and Spencer framed for corporate espionage." Another pause, longer this time. "What do you want?" 5 minutes of your time, to show you how they've been conducting your business." I could hear him breathing, considering. "Where?" "Hotel Marisol, rooftop bar. I'm here now, so are they." He hung up without answering. I handed the phone back to Paisley. "Put it back exactly where you found it, then get out of here." She hesitated. "What are you going to do?" "End this, once and for all." As Paisley slipped out, I took one final look around the room. On the nightstand sat a framed photo I hadn't noticed before. Cecilia as a child with her father, both smiling. A reminder that even people who do terrible things are still human, with histories and connections I knew nothing about. For a moment, doubt crept in. Was I going too far? Becoming what I hated? I pushed the thought away. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about justice, not just for me, but for everyone they'd hurt in their games of power. Back on the rooftop, I resumed my role as server, circulating near their table. Their conversation drifted toward me in fragments. "Flight confirmed for tomorrow. David says he can access the server tonight. She won't be a problem after..." Spencer checked his watch. "Almost time? Everything in place?" Cecilia nodded, sipping her champagne. "Hotel security will find her in the storage room, apparently with stolen property from guest rooms. Very embarrassing." My stomach dropped. They were planning to frame me for theft, to have me arrested in a foreign country. Before I could process this, The rooftop bar fell suddenly quiet. I turned to see Richard Harmon striding through the entrance, his commanding presence parting the crowd like a physical force. Cecilia's champagne glass froze halfway to her lips. "Daddy, what are you doing here?" Richard's cold gaze swept over their table. "I received an interesting call. Thought I should see for myself what my money is funding these days." Spencer stood quickly, extending his hand. "Richard, good to see you. We were just discussing the North Star situation." Richard ignored the outstretched hand. "Were you? Because I heard you were discussing how to frame a woman for theft and have her arrested." The color drained from Cecilia's face. "Daddy, I can explain." "I'm sure you can. You've always been creative with explanations." His voice was ice. "But first, I want to meet the woman you've been systematically destroying." I stepped forward, removing my server's cap. "That would be me." Gasps erupted from the table. Morgan half rose, then sank back down. Krista's mouth fell open. Spencer's face hardened into a mask. Cecilia recovered first, her shock transforming into fury. "You, how dare you contact my father?" "How dare I?" My voice rose, years of being the peacekeeper, the reasonable one, falling away. "How dare you destroy my career, steal thousands from me, plan to have me arrested, all for what? So Daddy could buy another company?" Richard's expression remained impassive. "Miss Reyes, I believe you mentioned evidence." I pulled out my phone, hands steady now. "Emails, texts, recorded conversations, everything showing how your daughter and her boyfriend targeted me specifically to help with your hostile takeover of North Star Publishing." Spencer lunged for my phone. "She's lying. She hacked my accounts." Jackson appeared beside me, placing himself between Spencer and me. "Security footage says otherwise." Richard held out his hand. "Show me." As I handed him my phone, Cecilia stood, desperation in her eyes. "Daddy, you don't understand. She betrayed us first. She—" "Enough." Richard's voice cut through the air like a blade. "I've seen enough." He scrolled through the evidence, his expression darkening with each swipe. When he looked up, his eyes were cold with fury, not directed at me, but at his daughter and Spencer. "You used my name, my company, to conduct this amateur psychological warfare, to frame an innocent woman, to commit actual crimes." Spencer stepped forward. "Richard, we were just trying to help secure the deal." "By committing fraud, corporate espionage, theft?" Richard's voice remained controlled, which somehow made it more terrifying. "Do you have any idea of the legal exposure you've created, for yourselves and for my company?" The rooftop had gone silent, other patrons pretending not to watch the drama unfolding. Richard turned to me. "Ms. Reyes, I owe you an apology, and compensation for your damages." He handed back my phone. "Name your price." Before I could answer, Cecilia's composure shattered completely. "You're taking her side? After everything I've done to help you? I did this for you." "No," Richard said quietly. "You did this for yourself, as always." In that moment, watching Cecilia's world collapse, I felt no satisfaction, only a profound sadness for the wreckage of what I'd once thought were real friendships. I looked at each of them in turn, these people I'd trusted, loved, shared my life with, and realized the truth that had been there all along. Some betrayals can never be undone, and some victories feel hollow, even when they're necessary.
Hi, I'm Alice. I own a $30 million luxury spa chain. But to my mom, I'm still just a failed nail tech. She tells people I'm between jobs. She set up a nail salon interview for me, and at my parents' anniversary party, I wasn't even allowed to speak. They praise my siblings like royalty, while I sit invisible in a room I helped pay for. Then came the fake job application, the ruined deal, the rumors of bankruptcy, started by my own brother. And now my sister? She's trying to steal my investors. How did it get this far? Thanksgiving used to be my favorite holiday, until it became a parade of polite humiliation, wrapped in gravy and green bean casserole. I pulled into the driveway of my parents' home in Austin just before noon. The house hadn't changed since I left for Arizona a decade ago. Same red brick, same overgrown rose bushes my mom always said she'd trim. I sat in my Genesis for a minute, fingers curled tight around the steering wheel. My heart thudded. Not from nerves, exactly. Just the quiet dread of being treated like someone I no longer was. Inside, the scent of cinnamon and roasted turkey clung to every corner. My sister Celeste greeted me with a wide, camera-ready smile. "There she is," she said, patting my shoulder like I was a stray cat. "Still doing nails out west, huh?" I blinked, smiled like I didn't just get slapped in the face. "Hi, Celeste. Happy Thanksgiving." Tobias, my cousin, chimed in from the living room. "You still using glitter polish on old ladies in Scottsdale? Or have you upgraded to eyebrow threading?" Chuckles rippled through the room. I felt every eye glance past me, not at me. They didn't mean to be cruel. That was the worst part. Dinner was a buffet of passive-aggressive commentary. My uncle bragged about his real estate portfolio. Celeste announced her promotion. Again. I stayed quiet, chewing on my stuffing and swallowing down words far heavier. Then came the moment I should have expected. My mother, Lorelei, raised her wineglass and smiled my way. "Alice has always been so artistic. She still does nails, right? In Arizona?" A silence fell just long enough to sting. Tobias burst out laughing. "Hey, art's art, even if it's on toes." I didn't flinch. I just raised my own glass, smiled back and said, "Something like that." After dessert, Mom pulled me aside near the fridge, her voice syrupy sweet. "Honey, I met a lovely woman at the market. Her daughter owns a nail salon downtown. They're hiring. I told her you'd stop by Monday." I stared at her. My ears rang. She kept going. "It's a good location. You'd get walk-ins. And stability. Finally. 12 spas, 5 states, $30 million in annual revenue. But to her, I was still the girl who painted glitter stars on her teenage cousin's toes at Christmas. I didn't argue. I just nodded and walked outside. The stars were beginning to pierce through the sky, soft and cold. I wrapped my arms around myself and exhaled slowly. She never even asked what I do. She just assumed. And tonight, something inside me cracked. The invitation came in the mail 2 weeks later, all gold foil edges and cursive script. "Join us in celebrating Lorelei and Alaric Wynn's 40th wedding anniversary." Celeste's name was printed at the bottom as event coordinator, of course. I stared at it for a long minute before setting it aside on the counter. I almost didn't go. I thought about skipping it entirely, sending flowers instead. But then I imagined their smiles, the toasts, the speeches, and my empty chair. That would have been too easy for them. I needed to be there, if only to remind myself why I kept my success to myself. The event hall shimmered with crystal chandeliers and velvet runners. Everything about it screamed money. I wore a navy sheath dress, simple, elegant, not flashy, but far from invisible. I walked in just as Celeste was directing the waitstaff. She barely looked at me before returning to her checklist. Tobias was already holding court at the bar, retelling some exaggerated story about a business deal in Miami. "Closed in 2 days. They begged me to take their money," he boasted. As I passed a group of ants near the floral arch, I caught the tail end of a sentence. "Celeste's new promotion will put her over 6 figures, so proud." No one mentioned me, not even in passing. I smiled, nodded when spoken to, asked polite questions. No one asked what I was working on, not even once. After dinner, the lights dimmed and the MC stepped up. "Now, a few heartfelt words from the Wynn children," he announced with practiced warmth. "Please welcome Celeste and Tobias." My name was never mentioned. Celeste took the mic first, glowing with self-importance. "Mom and Dad taught me that hard work and polish open every door. I wouldn't be where I am without their example." She turned slightly, smiling toward the table where I sat, as if my existence were a decorative afterthought. Then Tobias launched into a story about a family vacation where I supposedly cried over a broken nail kit. "Guess she knew early she'd be a beauty guru," he quipped. Laughter erupted. My champagne glass remained untouched. After the crowd moved toward dessert, I cornered Mom near the bathrooms. Why wasn't I included in the speech lineup? She looked genuinely puzzled. "Sweetheart, you're still figuring things out. Let the others speak first. You'll have your moment." I didn't argue. What would have been the point? Later that night, back home in Scottsdale, I sat on my balcony, watching the city lights flicker like distant answers I didn't have yet. My mind wasn't swirling anymore. It was sharp, focused. If I wanted them to see me, I'd have to stop pretending I was small. I'd have to let them see exactly what I'd built and who they'd ignored all these years. They didn't forget me. They just never saw me to begin with. The email hit my inbox just after sunrise, while I was sipping black coffee and reviewing the Q1 rollout strategy for Etherea's Chicago branch. Thank you for your interest in joining the Glam and Glow sales team. We're excited to invite you for an interview. My stomach flipped. I hadn't applied anywhere. I scrolled down. The attached resume had my name, my old Arizona address, and a stripped-down version of my early career. Internships, retail jobs, even a typo in the summary. The cover letter was the giveaway. My daughter is looking for structure and stability. She's personable, creative, and eager to rejoin the workforce. Lorelei. The contact number was hers. I didn't slam my mug down or scream. I didn't reply or call. I closed my laptop, grabbed my keys, and drove. Past the city limits, past the boutique hotels and cactus-lined roads. I didn't have a destination. I just needed motion, silence. Eventually, I pulled into a viewpoint above the valley. I sat there, letting the engine tick cool and the morning sun bake the windshield. And I thought about those years in Los Angeles, renting a studio so small the kitchen doubled as my desk, working front desk at a gym by day, waitressing at night, taking business classes in between, pitching spa concepts to anyone who'd listen, and plenty who didn't. I thought about how I met Dorian, how we built Etherea from nothing. I thought about our first real investor meeting, how I wore thrifted heels and didn't blink when asked if I could run a business as a woman in wellness. Every moment had been intentional, every step earned, and still, my own mother saw me as someone who needed a part-time job folding towels at a beauty counter. When I finally drove home, the sun was setting behind the mountains. I walked into my condo and dropped my purse by the door. No music, no lights, just me and the view from the glass balcony. I stood in front of the wall where I'd hung every major milestone. The framed certificate from our first grand opening, the article in Spa and Beauty Monthly, the award for top female entrepreneur under 40. And still, she thinks I'm lost. She applied for a job for me. The words came out before I even heard the door open. Dorian stood in the hallway, frozen, a takeout bag in hand. He set the food down, walked over. "You're kidding." I shook my head. His jaw tightened. "You need to stop letting them write your story." He was right. But first, I needed to decide how mine would be told. I booked the flight to Dallas 2 days after the job application incident. The invitation came from Celeste, some upscale networking mixer with selective industry elites. Normally, I wouldn't have bothered. But something about her timing felt calculated, and I needed to know what game she was playing. I arrived at the event just after sunset, dressed in a clean-lined black dress with no logo, no sparkle, and no need to explain itself. The venue was full of clinking glasses and curated introductions. Everyone's handshake had an agenda. Celeste was already on stage, part of a Women in Business panel. Her blowout was perfect, her voice syrupy. I took a seat in the back corner, blending in like I always had at family events, seen but not centered. She smiled toward the crowd. "A lot of young dreamers think opening a wellness spa is easy. Throw in a few candles, some eucalyptus, and voila, entrepreneur." Polite chuckles followed. "Especially in places like Arizona," she added, eyes glinting as she sipped her wine. It wasn't a joke, it was a jab, and everyone around me laughed like they understood something I didn't. I stayed still. My glass remained in hand, untouched. My fingers curled around the stem just enough to steady the fury crawling up my spine. Later, I spotted her leaning against the bar, laughing a little too loud, flirtatiously tossing her hair while chatting with a tall man in a tailored gray suit. She didn't recognize him. She didn't realize she was speaking to Dorian. I watched from a distance as she leaned in. "Do you know much about spa logistics? I'm thinking of starting something similar. Just, cleaner, classier." Dorian's smile was unreadable. He nodded, let her ramble about branding issues and those amateur spots that confuse polish with profit. She didn't stop talking. She didn't ask questions. She had no idea he was the COO of the very company she was subtly degrading. When he walked back to me, he passed a champagne flute into my hand. "She's clueless," he whispered. "She thinks she's the smartest one in the room." I nodded, lips tight. "Good. Let her think that. Because now, the wheels were turning. By the time we left the venue, we had a plan. Etherea's New York expansion would go public next month, with press coverage, a luxury campaign, and full executive exposure. If Celeste wanted to play businesswoman, she'd better prepare for a front-row seat to what a real empire looked like. She just declared war. And I'm ready to show her exactly who she picked to fight with. I was back at Etheria HQ, standing in the center of the glass-walled war room, when Dorian rushed in with his phone still pressed to his ear. "Greg pulled out," he said, eyes wide. "He's walking away from the resort contract." I blinked. "What?" "He said something changed, something personal." Dorian's voice dropped. "Call him." I locked myself in my office and dialed Greg's number. He picked up on the second ring, his tone awkward, too cheerful. "Alice, hey, look, I didn't want to make things complicated. Your mom reached out after Thanksgiving. She mentioned you were between jobs, freelancing a bit. I didn't want to add pressure." I closed my eyes, pressing a hand to my chest like I could keep my ribs from cracking open. "Between jobs?" "Yeah, I thought she'd know best," Greg muttered. "She said you needed space." "Greg, I run a company with over 200 employees." Silence. "I'm sorry," he said. "I truly thought—" "I know," I cut in. "Thanks for your time." I hung up and stared at the city beyond my office window. $7 million. Gone. Just like that. Because my mother couldn't utter the words, "My daughter is a CEO." The next morning I got in my car and drove. 8 hours, no stops. When I walked into her kitchen, she was slicing fruit like nothing had happened. "You talked to Greg?" I asked quietly. She looked up, surprised but not guilty. "Yes, lovely man. Why?" "You told him I was unemployed." "I didn't say unemployed. I said you were freelancing. I didn't want to put pressure on you." "You cost me $7 million, she scoffed. "Oh, Alice, you always exaggerate. I was just being honest. You jump around so much. I never know what exactly you do." I exhaled through my nose, steady. "I build empires, Mom. Quietly, because you never bothered to ask." She didn't flinch. She didn't apologize. That was the worst part. I walked to the door, keys already in hand. "If you can't see me for who I am, maybe I stop showing up altogether." She called my name, but I didn't turn back. Back in Scottsdale, I opened my phone, scrolled to her contact, and pressed block. "You want silence? Here it is." I let them talk over me for years, but if they keep pushing, I'll make sure they finally hear me. The silence I gave her wasn't a punishment. It was a boundary, a long overdue line drawn in stone. 3 mornings later, I was back on her doorstep. No warning, no smile. Just the sound of my heels on her porch and the door opening like it always did. Like I still belonged. She blinked in surprise, tightening her robe. "Alice?" I stepped inside, straight to the kitchen table, and pulled out a chair. My voice was even. 12 locations, 5 states, over 300 employees, annual valuation just past 30 million. She didn't sit. She stood there, arms folded, like the truth was something impolite. I continued. "We've been featured in Forbes, Vogue Wellness, and Business Today. I've spoken at 3 national conferences, and the only reason you didn't know is because you never cared to ask." Celeste appeared at the hallway, barefoot and eavesdropping. "That's cute," she smirked. "You memorized your LinkedIn bio." Then Tobias walked in, finishing a banana like he owned the floor. "Fake numbers don't impress real businessmen, Alice." I stared at him, deadpan. "I've done more in 10 years than you'll manage in your lifetime. But by all means, keep flapping your gums." Lorelei finally sat, her eyes wide but her lips shut. "Keep doubting me," I said, standing now. "It'll make watching what's next a lot more satisfying." I left before anyone could respond. No drama, no grand exit, just precision. 2 days later, Dorian dropped a name into my office like a warning. Marcus Adler. I froze. "Investor?" "Used to be. Said Tobias told him you were bankrupt. Said you lost everything in crypto, your company's a front, and you're under investigation." I didn't even blink. I opened my laptop, forwarded every screenshot my network had already collected, group texts, LinkedIn DMs, even a voicemail. I attached them to a formal legal letter and addressed it to Tobias's hedge fund's legal department. Subject line, defamation. First and only warning. I copied HR for good measure. A few hours later, my LinkedIn profile lit up with unusual traffic. Recruiters, reporters, even wellness bloggers. I didn't panic. I smiled. They're poking the bear, I whispered, and I'm done playing nice. If they want war, they better be ready for the woman they've spent a decade underestimating. The notification hit at 5:12 a.m. A text from one of my PR team. You'll want to see this before it spreads further. Attached was a blog post from a mid-tier wellness site. Nothing mainstream, but fast-growing. Headline: The Polished Lie. One insider's account of Etheria spas. It read like a manifesto from someone with a vendetta. Claims that I never earned my credentials, that my staff were underpaid, that our leadership was style over substance. It quoted an anonymous source who described me as obsessed with aesthetics, allergic to reality. I sat up, phone clutched like a blade. Minutes later, the article was already being retweeted by influencers in the wellness space. Hashtags like #HashFraudInWellness began popping up. Dorian walked in with coffee. He took one look at my face, set the mug down slowly. They're not holding back anymore. No, I said. They aren't. We alerted PR. A calm, professional statement went out within 2 hours. We categorically deny the claims in this anonymous piece. Our team remains proud of our work, and our values stand firm. But I knew this wasn't just an article. It was planted. Later that afternoon, I drove to my father's house. I needed one ally left in that family, just one. But as I stepped through the threshold, I heard her voice before I saw her. Spa meets finance, scaled but boutique. I'm calling it Aura. Celeste, pitching Dad, in his office, using my blueprint with a different name and a little lavender twist. I stood in the doorway, silent, watching him nod, slowly, arms crossed, but eyes interested. $250,000, she said. Just the seed. I'll double it by Q2. I stepped in. You're funding her now? Dad looked at me, startled. Alice. Celeste turned with a smirk. Oh, hi. Just giving him options. That's what good daughters do, right? I ignored her. You think my reputation's shaky, so you're putting your chips on her? He didn't speak. That was worse than yelling. I stared at him, then at her. If you invest in her, I said quietly, don't bother showing up when we cut the ribbon in Manhattan. No one stopped me as I walked out. Time to end this, on my terms, in front of everyone. The Morrison and Keene boardroom looked exactly how I expected. Glass walls, polished steel accents, a skyline view worth 7 digits. I stood behind the mirrored partition, arms crossed, watching Celeste work the room. She was in full performance mode, tailored blush suit, crisp slideshow, fake humility. This is more than just wellness, she declared. It's about elegance, accessibility, and empowerment. That's why I'm calling it Celestia, something that elevates. The partners nodded politely. She had rehearsed this. I recognized half the buzzwords from my own early pitches, except she was pitching them back to me. One of the board members tapped a pen against his notepad. Thank you, Miss Wynne. Before we continue, we'd like to loop in one more interested party. Celeste's brow twitched. Excuse me? I stepped into the room, black suit, hair slicked, folder in hand. Her jaw didn't drop, but her hands curled slightly on the table. What are you doing here? I smiled as I pulled up a chair. You're not pitching to Morrison and Keene, you're pitching to Etheria Spas, and I'm the one who signs those deals. Silence. I opened the folder, laid out our expansion map, East Coast schedule, revenue growth. 12 locations, national brand recognition, Forbes Wellness Empire to watch. Celeste didn't blink, but the pink in her cheeks deepened. You've been sitting on this. No, I corrected. I've been building it. She reached for her water glass, but her hand shook. You don't have to humiliate me? This isn't humiliation, I said coolly. This is what happens when you try to take shortcuts through someone else's mountain. The lead investor cleared his throat. Miss Celeste, thank you, but we'll be continuing with our original agreement. By the time I stepped into the reception afterward, the press release was live. Etheria Spas partners with Morrison and Keene to launch luxury flagship in Manhattan. Champagne flutes clinked around me. Dorian joined my side. Across the room, Celeste stood frozen, her smile sharp but her eyes blank. I turned to her, raised my glass slightly. This was just the soft landing. I could have crushed you. The sky over Manhattan was steel blue, streaked with early sun, and I was already dressed before my alarm buzzed. Today wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about pride. It was about arrival. From the penthouse suite overlooking Fifth Avenue, I could see the awning of our flagship Etheria Spa. Cameras were being set up, velvet ropes pulled tight. The city moved around me, fast and sharp, but I felt still. A soft knock on the door broke the quiet. "Someone's here," my assistant whispered. "Says she won't stay long." I opened the door and found my mother. She looked smaller than I remembered. No makeup. A black coat she clutched like armor. "I won't make a scene," she said, voice almost steady. "I just wanted to say you did it, and I didn't help. That's on me." No tears, no justification, just that. I nodded, unsure if I could speak without breaking. Later, when I stood at the podium, a sea of reporters and cameras aimed at me, I didn't talk about wealth or vision. I talked about belonging. I built this not because I was encouraged, but because I wasn't. Sometimes the empire comes after the war, and sometimes the war is being told you're too small to try. The crowd clapped, but I only looked at the front row, where my mother sat silently. She didn't stand, she didn't cheer, but she wiped a tear with her thumb and held my gaze. Afterward, I caught a glimpse of Alaric nodding politely before slipping away. Celeste hovered by the exit, pretending not to watch. Tobias never showed. Before Mom left, she pressed a folded piece of paper into my palm. Inside, it read, "I'm proud of you, even if I never said it right." Back in my suite, I poured myself a drink and stared out at the city I'd claimed. Closure doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, and this one whispered, "Enough. I may carry the scars, but I earned every one of them, and they're mine." Maybe your family never clapped for you. Maybe they didn't believe in your dreams, or they mistook your silence for weakness. I've lived that, and what I've learned is this: you don't need their applause to build something extraordinary. You just need to believe in it enough to keep going when no one else sees the vision but you. I spent years proving I was more than their assumptions. Not because I needed their approval, but because I finally understood I deserved my own. And if you're out there fighting a quiet battle, in your career, your home, your heart, let me tell you this: you don't owe anyone your silence just to keep the peace. Speak, build, be seen, and now I want to hear from you. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? What would you say if you finally had the mic? Tell me in the comments, even just drop a 1 if this story hit home, or tell me what city you're watching from so we can connect. And if it didn't resonate, that's okay too. Let me know why, and what kind of stories do speak to you. I read every comment, and your voice matters here. If this video moved you even a little, please tap that subscribe button so you don't miss the next story. There's more to tell, and I'd love for you to be here when we do. Hi there, I'm Alira, at my sister's baby shower. I found out I wasn't invited. No mistake, no oversight, just a clean, quiet decision to leave me out. Worse, they planned it for weeks. My mom helped, my cousins came, and my name was never even mentioned. Then someone sent me a video, and what I saw changed everything. It wasn't just exclusion, it was mockery. So I left. But not quietly. And what happened next? Let's just say, turning the lights on in a family built on shadows? Shocks more than you'd think. What would you have done? I came home that evening bone-tired. The kind of tired that doesn't just settle in your muscles, it seeps into your chest. I tossed my keys onto the counter, kicked off my shoes, and threw my bag onto the couch. The microwave hummed behind me, slowly spinning a plate of last night's pasta. I didn't even care if it was cold. Out of habit, I opened Instagram while waiting. First, a few baby animals, then a coworker's vacation pic. And then I stopped. Varel. She was glowing in a long floral dress, her hands cupped under her belly. The background: a perfectly staged backyard with pastel balloons, vintage lawn chairs, a 3-tier cake. The caption read, "Celebrating baby bloom with my favorite people. Couldn't feel more loved." The timestamp hit me harder than the photo. It was posted 10 minutes ago. My thumb hovered. I scrolled further. Cousins I hadn't seen in years, our old neighbor, even distant coworkers. My mother, front and center, holding a gift bag with pink tissue exploding out of it. But not one mention of me. Maybe it was a surprise shower. Maybe they'd forgotten to text. I tapped on Jessa's profile. Her best friend since middle school. She had 3 stories tagged at the same party. One said, "Been planning this for weeks. Varel deserves the world." Another showed a custom welcome sign, "Welcome to Baby Bloom's garden." So, no, it wasn't last minute. It wasn't a slip-up. It was deliberate. I tried not to react. I typed a message to Jessa. "Didn't know there was a baby shower today." She replied right away, a selfie, holding a plastic champagne flute clearly mid-laugh. "I thought you didn't like baby showers?" That's what Varel said, LOL. That LOL felt like a slap. I didn't respond. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. My microwave beeped, but I didn't move. I wasn't hungry anymore. I sat down, the phone still in my hand. The room was silent, except for the low hum of the refrigerator. A memory surfaced. Me sitting on my bed at 17, holding Varel while she sobbed about her first heartbreak. I'd stroked her hair, whispered, "You're not alone." Now she'd told people I didn't like being there, that I wouldn't have wanted to come. Not only had she excluded me, she'd rewritten who I was. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just sat there in that awful stillness, breathing shallow, frozen between disbelief and something that felt dangerously close to resolve. She had made her decision. I just hadn't made mine yet. I don't remember standing up, but somehow I ended up pacing my apartment. My dinner still sat on the table, cold and forgotten, while my thoughts spiraled louder than any alarm. The silence in the room wasn't comforting anymore. It was sharp, thick, accusing. I didn't want to call her. I shouldn't have. But my fingers moved anyway. The phone rang twice before Maris answered, sounding cheery, like it was any other evening. "Hi, sweetheart. Everything okay?" I blinked. "I saw the baby shower," I said, voice flat. "I didn't know there was one today." There was a pause, not long enough to sound surprised, just enough to sound calculated. "Oh, honey, I thought you were working. Varel mentioned you wouldn't be into it, and I didn't want to bother you if you were busy." That tone, sweet like syrup but dense with deflection. "You didn't think to ask me?" I asked. "I've literally been home all day." She let out a tiny chuckle. "You've always said you don't like big crowds. I figured you'd appreciate the space." Space? This wasn't space, it was erasure. "You invited every cousin we haven't seen since before the pandemic," I said quietly. "Oh, come on," she said with a light scoff. "Don't be so dramatic. It was just a silly shower." There it was. That phrase again. Just silly. Nothing. That's what I was to them. Nothing serious enough to be considered. "I gotta go," I said before I hung up. I sat back down, not out of exhaustion this time, but to keep from breaking something. My fingers moved again. I texted my cousin Molly. "Did you go to the shower today?" Her reply came in seconds. "Of course! We've been planning it on the family group chat for weeks, LOL." My heart skipped. "What group chat?" Another pause. Then she sent a screenshot. "Operation Baby Bliss. 20 members. My mother, Varel, aunts, even an uncle who lives in Maine. But not me. Photos of centerpiece mock-ups, jokes about the registry, polls for games, weeks of planning, all while pretending I didn't exist." Molly sent a final message. "Wait, you're not in it?" I didn't reply. Instead, I stared at my reflection in the dark screen of my phone. I looked tired. But under the fatigue, something else lived behind my eyes. Something sharper. They hadn't forgotten me. They'd removed me. And I wasn't going to keep pretending not to notice. I didn't sleep. I didn't even try. I lay on my back staring at the ceiling fan, listening to the soft click of each slow rotation like a metronome for my thoughts. And one memory wouldn't let go. It was from 3 months ago, on a Wednesday. I'd called my mom that morning, careful with my tone. "Hey, I've got that conference in Raleigh next week. It's just 3 days. Could you stay at my place? Feed Luna? I'll leave everything ready." There was a pause, followed by a long, pity-laced sigh. Oh, honey, my knees have been awful. Just going up and down the stairs kills me. I wish I could, really. I'd said it was okay. I told her I'd make other arrangements. And I did. I paid a sitter, left frozen meals, rushed home between sessions on FaceTime to check the cameras. It wasn't the help I needed that stung. It was the refusal without even a blink. I wouldn't have thought about it again, except that 2 days into that trip, I opened Instagram. Varel had posted a boomerang of them doing prenatal yoga in Miami. Mom flew in for my yoga class. So spoiled. I stared at the screen, unsure if I was misreading. The geotag didn't lie. She had flown 3 hours south. The same woman who couldn't walk up the steps in my apartment had put on leggings and joined a stretching circle, arms draped around her younger daughter like they were best friends in a wellness retreat. She looked happy, energized, pleased with herself. I never said a word about it. Not to her. Not to Varel. Not even to myself. I just let it file itself away with the rest of the things I wasn't allowed to feel. But tonight, after the call, the group chat, the glassy smiles, and the "we thought you were busy," tonight, that memory burned differently. This wasn't oversight. This wasn't about forgetting. It was about choosing. And over again, she'd chosen someone else. By the time I reached the venue, the sun had dipped low, casting long shadows over the white gravel driveway. Fairy lights strung through the trees glowed faintly like they were holding their breath. My heels clicked against the path as I approached the garden house, where the celebration still buzzed softly behind glass doors. I stepped inside without a word. The room was warm, over-decorated, soft pinks, gold accents, low music playing something acoustic. Conversations hushed. People turned. Some stared longer than they meant to. Others smiled with polite confusion, unsure whether to wave or wait for someone else to do it first. Varel spotted me. Her smile was fast, strained. "Wow," she said too loud. "You made it after all." I didn't answer. I just let my eyes find Maris, standing near the drink table, sipping from a glass of lemonade like nothing was wrong. She pretended to be adjusting a flower vase. It wasn't just the missing name on a list. It was the way they all shifted, rearranged themselves as I arrived, like I'd entered a play during the wrong act. I took a few more steps. No one asked me to sit. No one offered me a drink. I wasn't part of the plan, and everyone knew it. That's when she appeared. Thalia, Varel's mother-in-law, graceful and curious. She walked over, balancing a champagne flute. "You're Alira, right?" she said kindly. "Varel's sister?" I nodded once. She smiled, then turned to Varel. "I didn't see her name on the seating chart. Was that a mistake?" A visible beat passed. Varel blinked, then said, "We weren't sure if she was coming. It was all last minute." Thalia's expression didn't change, but her eyes sharpened. "Oh? I thought you said the RSVPs were locked weeks ago." The room tensed. Someone coughed. Someone else looked away. I smiled slightly. Not smug, just steady. "I just came to see it for myself," I said. Then I turned to my mother. "Don't worry, I won't stay long." Maris's mouth opened, but nothing came out. The party hadn't stopped, but the air had shifted. And for once, I wasn't the one scrambling to explain myself. I walked toward the edge of the garden where the crowd thinned, needing distance from the manufactured smiles. That's when I saw Kara near the dessert table, swirling her drink with a straw she didn't seem interested in using. She glanced up, then over her shoulder, and approached like someone tiptoeing into a room full of glass. "Hey," she said, voice low. "Didn't think I'd see you here." "Yeah," I said, half smiling. "Neither did they." Kara exhaled softly. "She ever tell you why she stopped talking to me last year?" I turned toward her fully now. "I assumed life got busy. Varel said you were overwhelmed." She gave a small laugh, bitter. "One argument. That's all it took. Next thing I know, she's calling me emotionally draining in a group chat I didn't even know I'd been removed from." I didn't speak. I didn't need to. "She's got this way," Kara went on. "Makes people believe they're making the decision, but she's already written the script." I nodded slowly. "You're not the only one." Kara touched my elbow gently. "You're not crazy, Alira. You're just inconvenient to the version of her people like best." She left me standing there, the words settling deep, like dust on old glass finally illuminated. I turned and found Corwin standing a few feet away. He didn't say anything at first, just looked at me like he didn't know where to start. "I'm sorry," he finally said. "I didn't realize you weren't invited." His voice was strained, careful, like someone stepping into water they thought was shallow but isn't. "I'm starting to notice things," he added. "Small things, how she talks about people, the things she hides." I studied him for a second. He wasn't making excuses. He wasn't trying to cover for her. He looked like a man who'd found a crack in the wall and couldn't stop staring through it. "It's never about one thing," I said quietly. "It's about the pattern people pretend not to see until it turns on them." He gave a slow nod, the kind that carries weight. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to, because this time someone else was finally listening. The next morning, light spilled across my kitchen table, warm and ordinary. But nothing about me felt ordinary anymore. I sat with a mug of coffee I hadn't touched, phone resting face down beside it. I hadn't planned to open Instagram, but an unfamiliar name slid into my DMs. "You probably saw this already, but yikes." My chest tightened. I tapped the link. The clip opened with a boomerang, champagne glasses raised, squeals of laughter. Then it cut. Varel stood in the center of the room, a wine glass in hand, looking radiant and smug. Someone off camera asked, "Where's your sister?" Without missing a beat, Varel grinned. "Probably reorganizing her bookshelf alphabetically by trauma." Laughter exploded. She added, "Didn't want the energy police showing up. We kept it light on purpose." Someone chimed in, "You're so bad." The camera panned, catching Thalia's face mid-blink, unreadable but not laughing. I watched it again, and again. Not because I didn't understand, but because I did. It wasn't just a dig. It was a public joke, at my expense, at a celebration I was erased from. I opened my messages, typed something to Varel, deleted it. Instead, I went to my notes, wrote exactly what I felt, simple, controlled, then copied it and opened a new message, not to my sister, to Thalia. "You asked if it was a mistake. I think this clip answers that better than I ever could." I attached the video and hit send. A few minutes passed, then her reply came. "I've seen enough. I'm sorry." Just that, but it was everything. I closed my phone, logged out. I wasn't interested in watching the fallout, but for the first time, I wasn't the only one watching what happened next. The afternoon sun barely warmed my apartment through the blinds when my phone rang. I didn't need to look to know who it was. I let it buzz twice before picking up. "Hi, Mom," I said flatly. She didn't greet me. "I heard you sent that video to Thalia." Straight to it. No hello. No, "Are you okay?" "I did," I said. A pause. Then the edge sharpened. "Why would you do that? Do you have any idea how that makes us look? Us. Not me, not Varel, us." "It wasn't a secret," I replied. "They recorded it at her party, Mom." Maris exhaled sharply. "People are starting to talk. Your cousins, the neighbors. Do you really think this is helping?" "Helping who?" I asked. "Because it's definitely helping me." "I'm serious, Elira. Varel is 7 months pregnant. She's hormonal. Things get set out of turn." "No, that's not what happened." "You're being dramatic," she snapped. "What happened to keeping family matters private? This doesn't need to become a circus." I felt my jaw tense. "It's always been private. That's how it kept going. You think this is the circus?" "No, Mom. The real circus is pretending nothing's wrong while your daughter's being mocked on camera by the one person she used to protect." There was silence. A heavy, calculated silence. Then she softened her tone, her favorite weapon. "Honey, please don't embarrass the family. We are family. This isn't how we fix things." I didn't flinch. I spent 30 years fixing things that weren't mine to fix. "Elira, you're not upset about what happened. You're upset I didn't stay quiet about it." I could hear her breathing shift, like she'd been slapped without contact. "You're overreacting." "No," I said, voice steady. "I'm just not underreacting anymore." And then I hung up. The call didn't end with a scream. It ended with a decision. Mine. After the call ended, I sat in the quiet for a moment longer. Not broken, just breathing. Then I stood up, walked to the hallway. There was a drawer I hadn't opened in years, the one labeled Keepsakes in Maris's perfect handwriting. I'd found it accidentally a long time ago, stuffed in a box of winter linens she gave me when I moved into this apartment. I never had the heart to throw it away, and never the nerve to really look inside. Until now. I opened the envelope. Dust puffed into the air like something exhaled. Inside were layers of cards and glossy prints. Birthday snapshots, old school events, handwritten letters. Every single one was about Varel. Varel's first communion. To my sunshine girl, love always, Mom. Varel in a tutu, Varel in braces, Varel at prom. Nothing with my name, not even a crooked drawing. My heart didn't break. It hardened. I took out my phone, lined the photos across the floor, snapped shots one by one. No editing, no commentary, just truth. Then I opened my laptop. Subject: before you believe her version of me, I attached the images. I added one line. This is what it's been like. I'm done pretending it wasn't. Sent to every aunt, cousin, Thalia, Corwin, and yes, Varel. Then I waited. Minutes passed. First reply: Jamie, my cousin. I had no idea, I'm sorry. Then Thalia: this confirms what I sensed. Thank you for trusting us with it. Silence from my mother. Then Corwin: I don't know how you lived with this, Alira. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. I didn't cry. I didn't even smile. I just exhaled, like I'd been holding my breath for decades. Then, inevitably, Varel's email came. All caps, no punctuation. How dare you drag this outside the family? I didn't answer, but Thalia did. Some things deserve sunlight, and that was it. Not a firestorm, not a takedown, just light, pouring in through a door they never expected me to open. It had been a week since the email, not a single word from Varel, no apology, no retaliation, just silence. Mara sent a vague text 2 days after. Let's talk soon. I read it. Let it sit. Never replied. The family group chat? Still active, but like a room no one wanted to walk into first. People posted generic memes, a recipe, a photo of someone's new dog. No one mentioned me, or the video, or the email. That kind of silence? It's not peace. It's avoidance wrapped in civility. But I didn't need noise anymore. I found myself revisiting the email I sent, just to make sure I didn't regret it. Still didn't. I didn't send it out of revenge. I sent it to stop pretending. I deleted the screenshot folder from my phone, not to erase anything, but because I no longer needed proof to believe my own memory. They didn't lose me because I yelled. They lost me because I finally stopped whispering. A few days later, I signed up for a weekend retreat for women in caregiving fields. Burnout and boundaries, topics I knew too well. I met up with Kara again. We had coffee outside under a string of lights, sharing stories that used to feel too heavy to say out loud. She laughed at one point and said, "You know what? I'm proud of you for not burning the whole house down." I smiled. I thought about it. Then she asked, "How's Corwin?" He messaged, said she started therapy. Kara's brow lifted. I shrugged. That's good. She needs it. You gonna be part of that? No. I stirred my tea. I wish her healing. I just won't sit in the room while it happens. The next morning, I stood by the window watching the city wake up below me. People heading to work, coffee in hand, dogs pulling on leashes. I pressed a palm to the glass, not out of sadness, but to feel something solid. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't closure either. But it was clarity. And sometimes, clarity is enough to finally breathe. Sometimes, the hardest part isn't being left out. It's realizing you've spent years trying to earn space in a story that was never written with you in mind. I used to think staying quiet made me strong. That if I just held it together, I'd be seen. That if I didn't rock the boat, I'd be invited aboard. But the truth is, silence doesn't build bridges. It buries you beneath them. And healing? It doesn't come from getting the apology. It comes from knowing you deserve better, even if it never arrives. So if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've been gaslit into thinking your hurt is drama, or your needs are a burden, please hear me when I say this. You are not too much. You were just too real for people who preferred the version of you that didn't speak up. And if that's the cost of peace, I'd choose my voice every time. Now I want to ask you, have you ever had to walk away from a relationship just to remember who you were? What helped you finally speak up? Or maybe, what's still holding you back? Drop a comment if this story touched you. Or leave a 1 in the comments if you've ever had to choose yourself over family expectations. Tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to know how far this message is reaching. And hey, if this resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more real, raw, and honest stories that just might sound a little like your own. Hi there, I'm Mia Carver, and let me tell you, nothing prepares you for the day your own parents smile at you, while handing over your house to your brother like it's some party favor. It wasn't just the house. It was years of betrayal wrapped up with a bow. The sleepless nights, the sacrifices no one noticed, the family dinners where I smiled while they quietly planned to push me out. But the worst part? They didn't just try to take my house. They tried to erase me. You think that's bad? Wait until you hear how far they went to destroy me, all while calling it family. The air was heavy with jasmine and expectation that summer evening, thick enough to suffocate me as I stood at the entrance of my parents' estate in Charleston. Their historic southern mansion stood like a grand stage set for a play I didn't want to perform in. Chandeliers lit, silverware polished, the marble floors gleaming too much to feel real. My name is Mia Carver. I'm 32 years old, and tonight was supposed to be about me, my birthday. But deep down, I knew better. All week, my mother had flooded my phone with those all too familiar passive-aggressive texts. Don't ruin this night, Mia. Try smiling for once, darling. Family first. Be gracious to your brother. He deserves to shine too. Each message felt like a stone added to the weight on my chest. I almost didn't come tonight. Almost. The party was in full swing as I walked in. Waiters floating past with champagne, cousins I barely knew air-kissing me like I wasn't the outsider in this picture. My parents were at the center, holding court. And there, in the middle of it all, was Bastian, my younger brother, dressed in a silk blazer, grinning like Charleston's golden boy. I smiled back, the kind of smile that doesn't reach your eyes. Inside, I was unraveling. Vivian, my mother, spotted me from across the room. She crossed the hall with her drink, her smile tight, voice dripping with faux concern. Mia, darling, I was worried you wouldn't show. Her eyes flicked over me like she was inspecting a blemish on a wedding cake. I wouldn't miss my own birthday, I said flatly. She leaned in, voice low but sharp like broken glass. You always make things so difficult. Can't you, for once, just be happy for your brother? This is family. Family. That word was their weapon. I nodded politely, excusing myself as she disappeared back into the crowd. Every step I took across that ballroom floor felt heavier, like I was walking toward something inevitable. As I made small talk with relatives, I caught Bastian's glance more than once, a smirk dancing on his lips, as if he knew something I didn't. I should have seen it coming. An hour in, the music dipped low, and my father, Magnus Carver, tapped his glass with a spoon. The crowd fell quiet. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, voice warm, practiced. Tonight we're here to celebrate my daughter Mia's birthday, but, he paused, smile widening. We also have a special announcement. I glanced toward Alaric, our financial advisor, who stood by the back wall, already frowning. My stomach tightened. Magnus continued, holding a small velvet folder in his hand. As you all know, family is everything to us. So, tonight, in the spirit of that family, we have decided to present a special gift to my son, Bastian. Polite clapping erupted around the room. My ears began to ring. My father held up the folder. We're officially transferring ownership of one of our company properties, Mia's house. Laughter, applause, someone even whistled. I stood frozen, blood draining from my face. I glanced at Bastian, who gave me a cocky, knowing grin. Vivian stepped up beside him, hand on his arm, smiling wide. It's for the family, she whispered, just loud enough for me to hear. You'll understand one day. I wanted to scream, but my throat closed up. The room blurred around me, guests clapping, nodding, smiling like this was the most generous thing they'd ever witnessed. Like I wasn't standing there, hollowed out, watching my life handed away like a party favor. Years of late nights at the hotel, skipped vacations, relationships sacrificed, all erased in that moment. When the applause faded, conversations resumed like nothing had happened. My parents beamed, Bastian soaked in the attention, and I stood there, crumbling behind the armor I'd built. Across the room, Alaric caught my gaze and subtly shook his head, as if to say, "Don't react now, they want a scene." I swallowed the lump in my throat, fists clenched at my sides. They thought this was over. They thought they'd humiliated me enough to keep me quiet. But if they thought I would stay silent after tonight, they had no idea who I had become. The echo of champagne glasses and hollow applause stayed with me long after I left that estate. The air outside had cooled, but the heat simmering in my chest burned hotter than ever. I drove home on autopilot, Charleston's quiet streets blurring past me like streaks of regret. By the time I stepped into my house, the house that apparently no longer belonged to me, the weight of the night finally hit me. I didn't bother turning on the lights. The moonlight spilling through the tall windows was enough to remind me this place wasn't mine anymore, at least not in their eyes. I kicked off my shoes, dropped my bag by the door, and sat motionless on the living room couch. My phone buzzed relentlessly on the side table. Another text from my mother. "You really should have smiled more tonight. It's about family, Mia." Family. That word had been weaponized so many times in my life, it had lost all meaning. I scrolled back through her earlier texts, the ones she sent in the days leading up to tonight. "Don't make this harder than it has to be. Try not to embarrass us. Your brother deserves to shine too." The words blurred together, but the message was clear. Sit down, smile pretty, and let them take whatever they want. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the empty walls, the carefully curated furniture, the photographs I'd hung over the years. All of it was mine. And yet tonight, they'd decided it wasn't. Somewhere around 2 in the morning, I finally dragged myself upstairs, but sleep never came. Instead, I lay awake, replaying every conversation, every smile that wasn't really a smile, every pointed glance between my parents and Bastian. By morning, the exhaustion hadn't left me. It had simply calcified into something sharper. Resolve. At exactly 8:13 a.m., an email notification flashed across my phone screen. Subject: Urgent. Need to see you. Alaric. A tight knot formed in my stomach. I got ready, pulled my hair back neatly, and left for the office. The Carver Hotel's headquarters wasn't far, downtown Charleston, tucked between historic buildings and cobblestone streets, a place I'd practically grown up in. I walked in, nodding at the front desk staff like nothing had happened, like the ground hadn't been ripped out from under me less than 12 hours ago. Alaric was already waiting in my office when I arrived. He stood by the window, arms folded, a manila folder resting on the edge of my desk. "You look like hell," he said without looking at me. "Good morning to you too," I muttered, shutting the door behind me. He finally met my eyes. "You need to see this." He slid the folder across the desk. I flipped it open. The numbers stared back at me, cold, indisputable. Unauthorized charges, unapproved expenditures, thousands upon thousands in marketing expenses that didn't add up. Alaric's voice was low, but sharp. "I ran a preliminary audit. This is just from the last 18 months, over $2.5 million in personal expenses, all funneled through the company's accounts." I flipped through pages, designer shopping sprees, luxury vacations, nightclub tabs disguised as branding partnerships, all tied to Bastian's name. "Are you kidding me?" I whispered, the bile rising in my throat. "It's systematic, Mia," Alaric said quietly. "He's been draining company funds for years. And guess who approved most of these expenses?" I didn't need to ask. My father's signature was stamped across nearly every page. I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding in my ears. This wasn't just about the house anymore. It never was. "This isn't negligence," I said finally. "This is theft." Alaric nodded once. "You need to decide how far you're willing to go." I sat in silence, flipping through each damning page. 3 years' worth of betrayal, staring back at me in black and white. The irony wasn't lost on me. How they'd stood in front of friends and family last night, preaching about loyalty and family values while bleeding the company dry behind closed doors. I closed the folder slowly, my fingers tightening around its edge. "They made this personal," I said, voice calm but cold. "So I'm going to make it professional." I glanced up at Alaric. "Get me everything you can. Every transaction, every signature. We're not letting this go." His eyes narrowed slightly. Then he gave a small nod. "Understood." As he left the room, I looked out the window at the Charleston skyline. If they thought this was over, they were about to learn how wrong they were. A week crawled by after Alaric's discovery, each day heavier than the last. I went through the motions, meetings, paperwork, polite nods in hallways, while inside, something sharp twisted deeper every hour. It was a quiet Thursday afternoon when the knock came, soft, hesitant, like bad news dressed up in perfume. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, there she stood, Vivian Carver, the woman who gave me life and spent most of it taking mine apart piece by piece. "Hi, sweetheart," she said sweetly, as if she hadn't tried to humiliate me in front of an entire ballroom days ago. The polite smile on her lips didn't reach her eyes. That's how I knew this wasn't a social visit. I stepped aside without a word, letting her in. She moved with practiced grace, heels tapping against my hardwood floors like a ticking clock. Vivian didn't waste time. She reached into her designer handbag and pulled out a thick folder, sliding it onto my kitchen counter. "It's just a formality," she said lightly, almost breezy. "Something the lawyers need you to sign." I didn't touch it. "What is it?" She tilted her head, voice syrup-sweet. "Nothing to worry about, darling, just housekeeping. You know how these corporate things are." My stomach sank. When my mother played sweet, it meant she had a knife behind her back. I opened the folder. My eyes skimmed the header first. Property transfer agreement. And then, in clean, cold legal language, the contents spelled it out. The house I'd worked for, bled for, lived in, was being reassigned to the company, so it could be gifted to Bastian. Legally, my name was there. A signature line waiting for me as if this betrayal needed my permission to be complete. I looked up slowly. "This is why you came here?" My voice felt like broken glass in my throat. Vivian's smile didn't falter. "You know how these things work, Mia. It's better for the family's image. Bastian will represent the brand better if the property is under his name. It'll look unified." She reached out, brushing invisible lint off her sleeve. "I know you don't like surprises, but this is what's best for all of us." All of us. I swallowed the bitter taste rising in my mouth. "Do you even hear yourself?" I asked quietly. "You're asking me to sign away my home." Vivian's face softened into mock concern. "It's just paperwork, sweetheart. You'll understand one day when you have your own family." Her words landed like a slap. Something cracked inside me then, not a break but a clean, sharp snap of realization. I set the folder back on the counter without looking at it. "You know," I said, voice steady, "I used to believe you when you said family sacrifices together." Her smile twitched. "Well, of course. But it's always been me, hasn't it?" I cut in. "I gave up everything. My weekends, my relationships, my life. So Bastian could party and you two could pretend we were this perfect family." Vivian's eyes narrowed slightly. The sweetness evaporated. "This isn't about you, Mia," she said coldly. "It's about what's best for all of us." There it was, the real voice behind the smile. I took a breath, gathering every ounce of the steel I'd spent years building. "No," I said firmly, "it's about control, and I'm done handing mine over." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Think carefully, Mia. Family comes first." I met her gaze head on. "Not when family treats you like property." The silence between us was louder than any argument. Vivian stood there a moment longer, her expression unreadable. Then, without another word, she slipped her handbag back over her shoulder and walked to the door. I didn't move until I heard it click shut behind her. Only then did I lean against the door, my chest tight, hands trembling. Not from fear, but from the weight of every unspoken battle finally coming to the surface. They thought they could push me over the edge. They didn't know how far I was willing to go. The door had barely clicked shut behind my mother when I knew I couldn't wait any longer. I spent the rest of that evening doing what I'd trained myself to do over the years, organizing, preparing, staying composed. For days after, I kept my head down at the office, making sure no one could see the storm brewing beneath my skin. My parents wanted me out of the picture quietly, and I knew better than to give them a reason to accelerate their plans. But I didn't have to wait long. Monday morning arrived like any other. I was sipping my black coffee at my desk, reviewing the week's meeting schedule, when my inbox pinged, subject, Carver Hotels board memo, urgent review required. The sender wasn't Alaric. It wasn't even my assistant. It was my father. The blood drained from my face before I even clicked. When I opened the email, the words punched me in the stomach. Proposal, effective immediately. Carver Hotels recommends a restructuring of executive leadership. Mia Carver to step down as CEO and assume the role of COO, Bastian Carver to be appointed head of branding. Beneath it, an additional note in my father's handwriting, scanned and attached. Mia has become emotionally unstable and unable to lead. For the good of the company and the family's image, a leadership shift is necessary. I couldn't breathe. The very man who had groomed me for this role since I was 16, the man who told me I was the backbone of this company, was now writing me off like a liability. Without thinking, I picked up my phone and dialed Alaric's number. He answered on the second ring. I was about to call you. My voice came out tight. You saw it? Yeah, he sighed heavily. And there's more. We need to talk. Within half an hour, we were sitting in the corner conference room at headquarters. Alaric closed the door behind him and slid another folder across the table toward me. I ran deeper checks, he said quietly, because something about all this felt wrong. I flipped the folder open and scanned the documents inside. It didn't take long before the numbers jumped out at me. Company assets, multiple properties, 2 hotel locations in Savannah and 1 here in Charleston, all mortgaged without board approval. A private loan attached to those mortgages, nearly $10 million. For what? I asked, throat dry. For Bastian, Alaric replied grimly. A personal business venture. Your parents signed off on everything, and they forged your signature to push the deal through. I leaned back in my chair, the weight of it all crashing down on me like a tidal wave. It wasn't just my house. It wasn't just my demotion. They were dismantling everything I'd spent my life building and using my name to do it. I stared down at the paperwork, my fingers trembling slightly as I flipped through page after page of betrayal. They didn't just want my house, I murmured. They wanted my life. Alaric stayed quiet for a moment, then leaned forward. Mia, this isn't about the company anymore. It's about survival. They're trying to erase you. I took a shaky breath and looked him in the eye. Then we stop playing defense? He nodded once, understanding immediately. I spent the next several hours gathering everything. Emails, financial statements, internal memos, the paper trail they thought I'd never find. Every signature, every forged authorization, every cent funneled where it shouldn't have been. By the time I finished, the sun was setting outside, casting long shadows across my office. I sat at my desk, staring at the mountain of proof, the sickening reality of what my own family had done. And then I opened a new email. To Board of Directors, Carver Hotels. Subject, Emergency Meeting Request, Financial Irregularities and Executive Misconduct. My fingers hovered over the keyboard one last time before I hit send. They thought they had silenced me. I was about to prove them wrong. The email to the board had barely left my outbox when I turned my focus to the next battlefront. I wasn't naive enough to believe the documents alone would be enough. I needed every loose thread tied, every name revealed. By Tuesday morning, I was back at my desk at Carver Hotels, scanning through the legal documents surrounding my demotion, the ones my father had tried to slip past the board like a formality. Each clause read like a dagger in disguise, but something else caught my eye. A sentence, a specific phrasing I'd seen before. It was the way the indemnification clause was worded, too technical, too polished. And I recognized it because I'd read it 100 times in contracts drafted by Tracy Dawson, the company's senior legal counsel, and my supposed friend. The hairs on the back of my neck prickled. It wasn't unusual for her to review documents. But this wasn't a standard contract. It was a knife wrapped in velvet. By late afternoon, I couldn't shake the suspicion. I walked straight down to the legal floor and knocked on Tracy's office door. She glanced up, startled. "Mia, what a surprise!" I closed the door behind me and folded my arms. "Let's skip the small talk." Her smile faded just slightly. "What's this about?" I walked over to her desk and dropped the contract in front of her. "I recognized your language. You wrote this." She didn't deny it. "I oversee all executive contracts," she said evenly. I shook my head. "Don't lie to me. This wasn't routine. You buried the property transfer terms in the fine print. You knew exactly what you were doing." For a moment, I saw something flicker in her eyes, and then she exhaled, leaning back in her chair. "It's just business, Mia," she said quietly. "Your parents asked me to make sure everything was airtight. In exchange, they promised me a partnership share once Bastion took over." My stomach turned. "You sold me out for a seat at the table?" Tracy's lips twisted into something like pity. "You've always thought loyalty mattered in this family. It doesn't." I stood there for a long moment, the weight of her words pressing hard against my ribs. Finally, I spoke. "You made your choice, Tracy. So will I." I walked out without another word, the click of the door behind me sounding louder than it should have. That night, back at my apartment, I sat at the dining table alone. The lights were dim, the city outside quiet. I opened my laptop and typed the words I never thought I'd send to my own family. To Vivian Carver, Magnus Carver, Bastion Carver. Subject, final warning. Any further attempt to take what is mine will be met with consequences. You've crossed every line. There won't be a next time. I read the words twice before clicking send. It wasn't anger that drove me anymore. It was something colder, sharper, a line I knew I would never uncross. Later that night, Alaric arrived, still in his office clothes, sleeves rolled up like he'd barely stopped working. "You sure about this?" he asked as he sat across from me. I nodded, sliding a thick folder toward him. "They've made it clear. This isn't about family, it's about power." We went over every document, every name, every move. "This isn't going to be pretty," he warned. "I'm not aiming for pretty," I replied. "I'm aiming for the truth." He looked at me for a long moment, then gave a small smile. "Good, because you're going to need every weapon you've got." I closed the file and leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. What they didn't realize was that I had stopped playing by their rules. It didn't take long after I sent the warning email for them to make their next move. Mid-September mornings in Charleston had a certain crispness in the air, but that Monday, the chill I felt wasn't from the weather. It was from an email forwarded to me by one of our junior marketing managers. Subject: Carver Hotel's brand expansion party, exclusive invite. The invitation banner was sleek and expensive, dripping with curated glamour. A branding event, they called it. But the guest list told another story. Social media influencers, nightlife elites, celebrities with no connection to hospitality, and the signature at the bottom, hosted by Bastion Carver, head of brand development. My fingers curled around the mouse as I scrolled down the invite. The date was tomorrow night. The venue was one of our flagship hotels. The budget? A whopping $300,000 approved under Marketing and Guest Relations. I barely had time to process when Alaric burst into my office holding a stack of papers. "You've seen it?" he asked, shutting the door behind him. I nodded once. "I just did." He dropped the breakdown on my desk. "Take a look. This isn't an event. It's a party for Bastion and his influencer friends. No corporate value, no stakeholder outreach. It's a stunt." I flipped through the pages. Designer catering, exclusive VIP guest rooms comped for the night, an open bar contract, entertainment costs, all funneled through the company books. "This is theft in glitter and hashtags," I muttered. Alaric crossed his arms, jaw tight. "It's clear now. They're not even trying to hide it anymore. They think you're already out." I looked up at him, something icy settling behind my eyes. Well, they're about to find out otherwise. That night, I sat in my living room watching social media flood with clips of the party. #Carver Elite #brand of the South Bastion Carver event. Every post was worse than the last. Bastion posing with influencers, clinking glasses, speeches about how Carver Hotels was undergoing a new era of leadership. I didn't see a single client, investor, or board member in the crowd, but the whispers at the office the next day told me everything I needed to know. She's losing control. Maybe it's time for fresh leadership. Mia's holding the company back. I heard every word in the hallways, every smile too tight, every glance too sympathetic. By mid-morning, I had enough. I called Alaric to my office. "Draft me an internal memo," I said. He looked wary. "You're sure?" I nodded. "This isn't reactionary. It's necessary." Together, we outlined every point, effective immediately. A full audit will be conducted on all marketing and branding expenditures. Discretionary spending accounts are frozen. All financial authorizations will require my direct approval. Any prior approvals not cleared by my office are revoked. When I finished reviewing it, I added one more line at the end. This company will no longer tolerate personal indulgence disguised as corporate strategy. The memo was sent to every board member, every executive, every department head. The fallout was immediate. My phone buzzed nonstop. Calls from department heads, emails from PR, texts from my parents demanding answers. Alaric walked into my office a few hours later, eyebrow raised. "You do realize what you've just done, right?" I nodded. I stopped waiting for permission. That evening, after the chaos of the day finally settled, I drove to one of our downtown hotels, the rooftop bar I used to visit when I needed clarity. The city stretched below me, lights glittering like embers. I stood at the edge, breathing in the night air, letting the noise fade into a dull hum. They wanted to paint me as the villain. Fine, I'd be the villain, because monsters aren't the ones who start the war, they're the ones who finish it. The first thing I noticed that morning wasn't the light pouring through the blinds. It was the sound. My phone, buzzing relentlessly on the nightstand. When I finally grabbed it, the screen lit up with missed calls, 37 in total. Board members, PR department, friends, and a barrage of text messages, all variations of the same alarm. "Mia, have you seen the news? You need to respond now. What the hell is going on?" With a sinking feeling, I opened one of the links someone had sent. Headline: CEO Sister Forces Brother Out. Family Feud Shakes Carver Hotels. Below it, a photo of me and Bastian from 2 years ago, smiling stiffly at a corporate gala. The article painted me as a tyrant, a cold, power-hungry executive who pushed her younger brother out to claim sole control of the family business. Every word twisted, facts distorted. I barely had time to process when Alaric's name flashed on my screen. I answered immediately. "Tell me you're seeing this," I said without preamble. He let out a breath on the other end. "It's worse than you think. Bastian leaked internal emails. Selectively, of course. He's feeding them to the press, making you look like you orchestrated everything." My stomach clenched. I sat up, the sheet slipping off my shoulders. "How?" "Through one of the junior legal clerks. Probably promised them a promotion. And it's not just one outlet, CNN, Business Weekly, even local stations. The story's everywhere." My inbox confirmed it. Hundreds of messages, some from reporters, some from board members, some from so-called friends who couldn't wait to weigh in. Scrolling social media was worse. #Carver Family Feud, #Mia the Monster, #Justice for Bastian. Every comment dripped with judgment. What kind of sister does this? She's destroying her own family. Another rich CEO who cares only about power. Vivian's message came in not long after. "See what you've done to this family?" I stared at the screen, my fingers numb. She wasn't upset about the lies. She was upset they were no longer the only ones controlling the narrative. By noon, the tension inside the office was thick enough to choke me. Colleagues I'd worked alongside for years avoided my gaze. Some even whispered behind closed doors, conversations that stopped the moment I entered the hallway. It wasn't paranoia. I knew Bastian, and I knew how he worked when he felt threatened. By late afternoon, I walked into one of the senior manager's offices. Mark Ellis, head of operations. He barely looked up. "Got a minute?" I asked. He nodded stiffly. I closed the door behind me. "Let's not pretend," I said. "I know you've been in meetings with Bastian." Mark sighed, rubbing his forehead. "People are nervous, Mia. The company's image is tanking. Investors are calling. Staff don't know who to trust." I leaned forward, voice low but sharp. Let me make one thing clear. I'm not the one who dragged this family feud into the spotlight, but I will end it. Mark met my eyes finally, something like doubt flickering behind his. That night, back in my apartment, Alaric sat across from me, laptop open between us. We have enough, he said quietly. Everything's ready. I nodded. Schedule the emergency board meeting. He hesitated. Once this is public, there's no undoing it. I didn't blink. They made it public. Now they'll face the truth. I spent the next 2 hours organizing files, financial records, audit reports, legal documents, every forged signature and manipulated account. My arsenal. If they wanted a war in the spotlight, I was about to blind them with the truth. The boardroom had never felt so cold. It was early October, the air outside still clinging to the last breath of summer, but inside, the tension sucked all warmth from the walls. I arrived early, my files tucked under one arm, my steps deliberate. The long mahogany table stretched before me like a battlefield, chairs slowly filling with board members and senior executives, some avoiding my gaze, others watching me too closely. Across from me sat my parents, Vivian and Magnus, their expressions carefully neutral. And beside them, Bastian, scrolling casually through his phone as if he wasn't moments away from losing everything. I didn't speak until the last chair was filled and the door clicked shut. Let's begin, I said, voice calm, even though my pulse thundered beneath my skin. The CFO glanced at me, hesitant. This emergency meeting was requested by Miss Mia Carver. I stood, placing the first folder in front of me. What you're about to see is not just about leadership disputes or family disagreements, I began. It's about betrayal, fraud, and the misuse of power. I flipped the folder open and slid copies across the table. Audit reports, financial statements, copies of my own forged signature, receipts, emails, mortgage agreements, all pointing to one conclusion. For years, I continued, company funds have been redirected for personal use, luxury parties disguised as marketing events, private loans secured against corporate assets without board consent, forged documents, and it wasn't accidental. A murmur rippled through the room as pages were flipped, brows furrowed. Magnus leaned forward, voice strained. We can handle this internally, Mia. No need to drag the company's name through the mud. I met his gaze, unblinking. You didn't hesitate to humiliate me publicly. We settle this publicly. Vivian shook her head. This is family, Mia. You're destroying it. I wanted to laugh, but my throat was too tight. No, I said evenly. You destroyed it the day you decided my loyalty was something you could exploit. One board member, Mr. Carrington, cleared his throat. These are serious allegations. They're not allegations, I replied. They're facts. The next hour passed in a blur of questions, clarifications, documents handed back and forth. Bastian remained quiet, arms crossed, jaw clenched, while my parents grew increasingly pale. Finally, the CFO spoke. It's clear we can't ignore these findings. A vote was called. One by one, hands were raised around the table. In favor of removing Bastian from all executive roles. In favor of freezing all personal company accounts pending investigation. In favor of restructuring leadership and tightening financial controls. Each vote felt like a nail sealing the coffin of what my family had built. When the last hand went up, the room fell silent. Magnus looked smaller somehow, slumped in his chair. Vivian refused to meet my eyes. Bastian pushed his chair back with a screech and stood abruptly. This is a mistake, he spat. You'll regret this. He didn't wait for a response. He stormed out, leaving only the echo of his footsteps behind. My parents followed shortly after, my mother pausing just long enough to throw me a look so sharp it could have cut glass. And then the room emptied, one by one. I remained seated, staring at the pile of papers in front of me. I had won the war, but the battlefield was covered in blood. 3 months had passed since the vote, since the boardroom showdown that burned everything to the ground. The boardroom itself was long behind me, just another sterile space with polished mahogany, glass walls, and the echo of raised voices. But even now, the ghost of it lingered. Some rooms stay with you, not because of what they hold, but because of what you left behind in them. Outside, Charleston's January air pressed sharp against my skin when I stepped out each morning. It had that bite to it, the kind that cuts through you, crisp and cool, almost surgical in its clarity. The holidays had come and gone, and as the new year unfolded, it didn't feel like a fresh start. It felt like aftermath, a reckoning. The fallout had come faster than anyone expected, quicker even than I'd prepared for. Bastian resigned within days of the board vote. His image, once carefully curated and broadcasted to investors, influencers, and the glossy business magazines, crumbled overnight. He didn't even bother to hold a press conference. There was no carefully worded statement, no attempt at damage control, just a line in an email, followed by silence. The media had turned on him instantly. Those same outlets that had sung his praises weeks before now published exposés about backroom deals, nepotism, manipulation. Investors who had once sat beside him at charity galas stopped returning his calls. His social circles evaporated, faster than the ink on the papers that sealed his fall. Magnus and Vivian didn't fare much better. The legal proceedings that followed left them cornered. Quietly, without a word to the public, they relinquished their controlling shares of Carver Hotels. No apology, no explanation. Their exit was as cold and calculated as the maneuver that started this war. By February, Carver Hotels was almost unrecognizable. The company restructured from the foundation up. Compliance officers were hired. The board expanded to include independent members who had no blood ties to the Carver name. The Financial Audit Committee was no longer a formality. It became a watchdog with real teeth. And the family name? It was removed from every executive expense account, every side fund, every shadowy trust. For the first time in decades, Carver Hotels wasn't a family business. It was just a business. It was everything I fought for, everything I said I wanted, and it cost me everything. By Christmas, when the dust had settled, I found myself standing in front of my parents' house, the same house I hadn't seen since the night the boardroom battle ended. I hadn't planned to come back. There had been no invitation, no olive branch extended. But Alaric had said something to me one night as we worked late in my office, after everyone else had gone home. "You fought the fight, Mia," he'd said. "At some point, you have to decide what peace looks like." So there I was at their doorstep, holding a bottle of wine I didn't expect anyone to drink. The door opened slowly. Vivian stood there, thinner than I remembered. Her sharp edges dulled, not by time, but by defeat. She didn't smile. She barely looked at me. "Merry Christmas," I offered, my voice low, uncertain. She nodded once, stepping aside to let me in without a word. Inside, the house felt unfamiliar. It wasn't that the furniture had changed. It hadn't. The paintings on the wall, the crystal on the mantelpiece, the quiet hum of something classical playing in the background, it was all exactly the same. But it felt hollow, empty in a way that had nothing to do with space. Magnus sat by the fireplace, staring into the flames like they held answers. He glanced up briefly when I entered, his eyes meeting mine for a fraction of a second before he turned back to the fire without speaking. Bastian wasn't there. I hadn't expected him to be. Last I heard, he'd moved to Atlanta. No headlines, no fanfare. Word was he worked an entry-level marketing job now, under someone else's name to avoid the press. It was strange how fast the mighty fall, and how quietly. Dinner that night was a hollow ritual. The conversation was stiff, filled with forced pleasantries and long silences. No one talked about the company. No one mentioned the lawsuits or the headlines or the fact that everything that had once defined us was gone. When I left that night, walking out into the cold December air, I finally understood something I hadn't before. There was no going back. Some bridges, once burned, aren't rebuilt. They stay ash, crumbling beneath your feet every time you try to cross them. In the months that followed, I focused on what remained. The company stabilized, piece by piece. Employees who had once whispered about me in the hallways now began to trust my leadership, not because of the name on my badge, but because of what I did. Because I showed up every day, sleeves rolled up, doing the work. I stopped waiting for the next betrayal. I slept more nights at home instead of in hotel rooms or the boardroom, stopped checking my phone at 2 a.m. for the next crisis. And Alaric, he never left. We became something more solid in the quiet aftermath. Not just business partners, but something real, something that had nothing to do with contracts or strategy. One evening in February, walking along the Battery as the sky turned lavender and the sea air pressed cool against us, he glanced at me and asked casually, almost like it didn't matter, "Ever think about starting a family?" For the first time in what felt like years, I smiled without hesitation. For the first time, I said, I think I'd be ready. But the real healing, the kind that mattered, happened quietly, without headlines or ultimatums. One Saturday afternoon, months after the dust had settled, I found myself back at the house. Not the one I grew up in, the one they tried to take from me. My house. The January sun hung low, casting long shadows across the porch. I sat there with a cup of coffee, the hum of Charleston moving around me in the distance. For the first time in a long time, there was no noise in my head. No strategy forming, no defense ready, just quiet. I had fought for this house, for the company, for the truth. But the fight had never really been about them. Not my parents, not my brother, not the board. It had been about me, about reclaiming something they had tried to take from me long before they touched my title or my property, my worth. They tried to make me small, replace me, dismantle me, piece by piece. But I was still here. And as I sat there, watching the sky shift from gold to indigo, the weight I'd been carrying for years finally eased. Not all the way, but enough. Justice had never been about revenge. It was about something quieter, something steadier. It was about finally reclaiming myself. Before I end this story, let me leave you with something I wish someone had told me sooner. The truth is, sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you will be the very ones who tear you down. And when that happens, you have two choices. You can shrink yourself to fit their expectations, or you can stand up, even if it means standing alone. What I learned through all of this is that family isn't about blind loyalty. It's about boundaries, respect, and the willingness to walk away when love turns into control. I fought not just for a house or a company. I fought to remind myself, and maybe you too, that your worth is not defined by how much you tolerate. So let me ask you, have you ever stayed silent just to keep the peace, even when it cost you everything inside? If this story touched something in you, let me know in the comments. Drop a 1 if you've ever had to stand up for yourself, even when it hurt. Or tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to know who's out there listening. And if you didn't like this story, tell me why. What part made you pause? What part made you angry or made you think? Most importantly, don't forget to subscribe to this channel so you don't miss the next story.